I'm not used to it. Change open. Despite the fact that our previous open was allegedly royalty-free, apparently the people still wanted a piece of it. It's very strange. So Facebook said, you got to share. To be fair, as I said to Griffin, Facebook told us we had to share monetization, and I was like, oh, now how do you split up a penny? Like, how does that work? I've never seen it. I guess maybe in Office Space they did the bit where they were like rolling a tenth of a penny or something, and then it kept accruing and made us in a little bit of trouble. But I don't think we're gonna end up in that spot. I don't know. Maybe we're gonna be called in by Lumberg. How's it going? I don't know if that's gonna happen. But did we put Office Space on the list?
I think it is on the list. Yeah. I'll make sure.
We should watch Office Space. We should do that.
Got to get through college basketball first.
We don't have to.
No, we have to. Yeah.
Is that the way it is?
I mean, that's number one on mine. Yeah.
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. It was good to get to college basketball last night. We will be talking about that. Good morning. It is the Thursday edition of Glenn Clark Radio. I'm Glenn. He's Griffin. And yes, Maryland, emphatic. I say emphatic. It's not like they won by 30, but in a game of cat and mouse, they were always in front. And Michigan would put together little spurts, and every time they did, Maryland had an answer. And it was just a solid road win. And Maryland really has completely shaken that knock that they couldn't win on the road. Now the good news is they don't have to play another road game. That was it. Last one. They'll be away from home other than on Saturday, but they won't play another true road game. They look like a team that can go play anywhere. And as long as they can keep those 5 guys on the floor, they're in great shape. Actually, Jordan Geronimo was helpful last night, but like in context of there's been so little that anything at all is helpful. Jordan Geronimo was helpful last night, and they didn't have 0 points from their bench, so we'll call it progress. That's what we'll call it. We will talk about Maryland's big win as our buddy Mike DeCourcy from Big Ten Network and Fox Sports will join us. Also coming up this morning, I got the book on Monday, and I finished it last night.
Wow.
It was a bear.
Big reader.
But it was very much worthwhile. The book is called The Last Manager. It's by John Miller, formerly of the Wall Street Journal, and it's all about Earl Weaver. And it's been a project that I've been hearing about for some time because I know Stan was trying to help John get in touch with people that would be relevant for the book. So look forward to chatting with him about it. And the question that I have coming out, and I think it's purposeful, you read the entire book and you still find yourself saying, was Earl Weaver a good manager? But that's the idea. That's the idea is it makes you ask questions about the role of a manager, the job of a manager, and I'm looking forward to chatting with John Miller about it later on in the show. Also, Will Schaller is going to join us, Maryland Lacrosse defensive stud. They, of course, were down in Atlanta on Saturday as they avenged their national championship game loss, sort of, by beating Notre Dame, and they're the undisputed #1 team in the country. They now turn around, come home, and play Delaware on Saturday. We will talk to him about all of that. And it's Thursday, so we'll let Griffin do fighting words, and we can talk about hair grease and whatever. Major fights that won't be, because that's boxing. That's the way that it works.
Hey, not anymore. Now that TKO and I guess we'll get to it, but now that TKO is going to partner with
sure
the UFC, and
it's definitely going to change.
New boxing banner.
Allow yourself to believe that. All right, so all of that coming up.
Dan West never let us down before. What do you mean?
That's a great point. All of that coming up on the program today. Stan the Fan and Luke Jackson are currently en route to Sarasota, where they will be covering Orioles spring training, hopefully providing some good news. There wasn't a lot of that yet. Remember how excited we were about Felix Bautista on Monday? We were like, wow, riding high.
They say you get one.
Or right? Yeah, correct. You want to have one pleasant day, you may have one pleasant day, and then right back to getting punched in the teeth. But hopefully they'll be providing us some good news as they are down there and covering spring training at PressBoxOnline.com, Facebook.com/PressBoxSports, Stan and Luke's coverage brought to you by HelpMyGamblingProblem.org, Easy Pass, Costas Inn, and Live Casino and Hotel. I guess as much as I'd like to just discuss the pleasantness of Maryland's win, we probably should cover what was an eventful day at Orioles spring training. I guess we don't need to panic about Grayson Rodriguez. Apparently, it all started with like an accident on the highway that like.
Oh gosh! What is with people driving in
Florida?
South Florida.
Florida, it's a nightmare. It led to like the Orioles arriving late. Brandon Hyde wasn't there for the start of the game. It was just a nightmare of a day. Grayson Rodriguez, the way that it was tweeted about, of course, we're not allowed to watch, and why would we be? The way that it was tweeted about, like, was panic-inducing. Was Grayson Rodriguez's velocity goes down, and then he's taken out of the game. And you're like, oh, God, no. That can't be happening right now. And so everybody's losing their minds. Well, apparently, as it turns out, it's not that bad. Apparently,
right.
Well, I'll let you feel how you feel. Grayson Rodriguez simply said he felt sluggish on the mound, but says it wasn't a physical or mechanical issue. This according to Andy Koska. Quote, I just don't think I could really get behind the ball today, spin it how I wanted to. Everything felt kind of flat, like during the bullpen today. I don't know. I just wasn't able to spin the ball well today. My command obviously wasn't there, unquote. Apparently, the velocity being down was intentional. It's part of the ramp-up process for Grayson Rodriguez to the start of the Major League season and not related to a physical issue that he was dealing with. Okay.
All right, good.
Sure, I guess we don't have any reason to be concerned. I guess that's all right. You don't like hearing the word sluggish. Like
he just slept past his alarm,
Yeah, or as a couple people, everybody was stuck in this traffic, so like it's not pleasant for anyone to be stuck in traffic. This is not something that you're going to deal with going into an actual Major League game. The guys get to the ballpark 3 hours ahead of time, not more than 3 hours ahead of time, more like 4, maybe sometimes 5 hours ahead of time. The traffic doesn't impact them like it does in spring training. When you're not traveling to the location the night before, getting a good night's rest, you're driving there in the morning and running the risk of something like that. So maybe the two things are related? Maybe? I don't know. Add into that list, and then we'll get to the big one, Andrew Kittredge, apparently dealing with some soreness and some light inflammation in his left knee. Remember how deep the bullpen? We were just talking about it this week. Like, yeah, you get Felix Bautista back in place, and now you got Soto, Dominguez, Cano, Kittredge, all of it. They're so deep. Apparently, they're going to get some imaging done on Andrew Kittredge's knee. Geez. So that's great. That's great. And then the biggie, Gunnar Henderson, apparently not a certainty for opening day. Gunnar Henderson, a mild intercostal muscle strain. And, of course, Griffin knows. Dr. Bass, if you don't mind, please, if you won't mind, remove your shirt. Show everyone where the intercostal muscles are, if you don't mind.
The intercostal, well, that's probably an oblique. It's probably like here.
Apparently, they're between the ribs. It's apparently where they are, is between the ribs.
So like here.
Yeah. Mild intercostal muscle strain. Brandon Hyde telling reporters yesterday he's still, quote, very, very hopeful, unquote, that Gunnar will be ready for opening day. And that
I'm very, very hopeful, too.
Look at that. We have that in common. Look at us. Who would have thought? Not me. Not me. And that Gunnar Henderson is improving, apparently, but not a certainty that he will be available for opening day.
They said Jordan Westbrook's good, though, because he realized he was just sleeping on a bad mattress.
Yeah, that's the
or his mattress was too soft.
That's soft. Exactly what it was.
Too soft.
Too soft at the Airbnb or wherever all the boys are staying, the frat house that they're all hanging out in during spring training.
Jordan Westbrook is too good of a bed.
Look, man.
Hurt his back.
Nothing there that's like nightmare fuel. This isn't quite like last year when you show up at spring training and everybody's riding the high of new ownership and Corbin Burns, and we're like, this is the greatest time of my life. And then they're like, hey, here's the thing, though. All of the other pitchers can't pitch. And you're like, what? What? Excuse me? Like, yeah, no. Be excited and all, but, like, I hope you don't want any of the other pitchers. What? Yeah, none of them are available.
Well, we got Bradish for 5-6 starts.
Sure did. Yeah. Sure did. I remember them. Kind of. I remember thinking, like, hey, he's looking like Kyle Bradish for a second. Like, yeah. Nothing that – it's not like that. There's nothing there that changes your opinion about how the season's going to go in what you've learned. Now, it would change your opinion if suddenly, like, tomorrow they're like, yeah, actually, Gunner's not feeling quite as good and coming back from that. Like, nothing there is really all that. Even if Gunnar Henderson – and I think the wording from Brandon Hyde was like, we're not going to be obsessed with one specific game, getting him back for it. While for the city, opening day is a monumental thing, and it's something we care about deeply, and it's homecoming, and it's, like sort of a religious experience. For them, it's still one baseball game. And I get Brandon Hyde's point, which is we're not going to be so concerned about opening day that we make our decisions based around his availability for that one baseball game. We're just as fine with him playing in Game 2 or Game 3 as we would be in him playing in Game 1. So when we talk about availability for opening day, there's a literal sense versus the figurative sense is the start of the season. Is he available when the season – does he have to start the season on the injured list? Is he out for the first –
2 weeks, 10 days.
Something like that. The literal sense is he playing in the first game? And, as we remind ourselves, the first games are on the road. They're not actually even the opening day that we care about here. The first games are in Toronto. 4 of them, right? They play a 4-game series to start the season? Griffin's got his handy-dandy schedule.
Yes, 4 games in Toronto.
Yeah, that's weird, right? Toronto's got a dome, so they don't have to worry about rainouts.
3 o'clock starts.
Usually the first series of the season, you have like the Thursday thing, and then you build in an off day on Friday so that in case there's a rainout, you can move. But they don't have to worry about that in Toronto because they literally cannot have a rainout because they have a dome over their stadium, so they can play 4 straight.
Yeah, so naturally the Orioles, when Boston comes back, they have Tuesday off.
Right,
because they play Monday.
It's their backup. Yeah. It's their in case of emergency, or if it looks like there may be a little rain in the forecast, just go ahead and bump it, and then obviously it won't rain, and everybody will bitch about it, and that's the way that it goes.
It'll be much colder on Tuesday, but hey.
Yeah, far more miserable day. Unquestionably the worst choice of the 2 days. The Monday will prove to be sunny and 60 degrees, and then instead...
there was a 40% chance of thunderstorms.
Instead, you'll play in overcast and 42 on Tuesday. That's the way it works, and we complain about it and piss and moan, and we show up anyway. That's the... Hello, welcome to Baltimore. That's who we are as a people. But I say all that to say, like, what we really care about is Gunnar Henderson going to miss time? Because if he doesn't play on Thursday, March, what's the date?
27th.
If he doesn't play on Thursday, March 27th, who gives a flying F? If he's back on Saturday, March 29th, he missed 2 games. I mean, you'd rather have him, obviously, but he missed 2 games. Life goes on. The real question is he not going to be available until, like, mid-April? Because then, it's any significant period of time that you're missing Gunnar Henderson is concerning. So we'll see how that plays out. Not panicked. It's just in the aftermath of the high of Monday, it was it was just a valley. It was a little bit of a low yesterday to have that combination of things happen. And with the Grayson Rodriguez thing, it's just watching the next time he pitches. Like, that wasn't great. How does he look the next time? If he looks fine, then sometimes you have days like that, and you're more likely to have a game like that maybe in the circumstances of spring training than you are during the course of the season. But I think the difficult part for us is we're judging Grayson Rodriguez not by whether or not, it's unlikely he's going to have days during the regular season where he's only throwing the ball 85 miles an hour. It's just that what we're measuring is Grayson Rodriguez ready to take this ascent towards being the ace of the staff? And just having days where he's like, yep, couldn't get behind the ball. You're like, that doesn't feel like an ace. It just doesn't feel that way. I had somebody bring this up to me, is do they purposely set the rotation so that the home opener starter matters? Or do they literally just start their fifth starter for the home opener? Like, do they throw Grayson Eflin, Morton, Sagano, and then it's just Dean Kramer who starts the home opener at that point? Or do they somehow
make Grayson, they hold Grayson?
Yeah, and have him start the home opener? And I other than if there's a health issue that they're dealing with in how they set it all up, my gut tells me
they wouldn't, but I mean,
they'll just say, Dean Kramer, or whoever they think their fifth starter is.
But I think
they'll start their first four guys in Toronto. They will not make a decision to try to have a cool pitcher start the home opener. Yes, we all remember what it felt like to have Corbin Burns start the opener last year and look amazing. And how electric it was. It was so cool, man. Like, what a great day that was. But I just don't think they're going to make decisions like that. I think they're going to...
Is it a problem if they do? I don't know.
Is it a problem? I mean, hard-pressed to call it a problem. But why? Why do... I mean, the risk would be that's one less start that person might be able to make before the All-Star break. And I know that you could say for a lot of these guys, you're going to try to skip them at some point or whatever. You can say that, but I don't know if you're thinking like that with Eflin in particular, who's a pending free agent, right? Like, is that a priority for you to limit his innings? Is there any reason why you'd need to do that? I hope that you're at a point where you still don't feel the need to do that with Grayson Rodriguez. I don't know. But my gut is no, they don't think like that. And Dean Kramer is popular, and if that's the way that it works out, that they start the other four guys in Toronto, I think Orioles fans would love to root for Dean Kramer to start the home opener. I think that would be great. Or if it's one of the new guys, if like Sagano starts, then it's here you get your first chance to see this new guy on opening day, whatever it is. I just don't think it's going to be Grayson.
Or it's Dylan Cease.
Yeah, that would be swell. Don't get me wrong. I'd be in favor, but I don't think that's going to happen. All right, so there you go.
Luis Castillo, then,
Right. If he's the fifth starter, sure, that would be great news for the Orioles if he's their fifth guy.
Oh, he's going to get into camp. He's going to get into Orioles camp late,
and so
they're
going to
be
get him
we'll
hold him out to the fifth. That makes
or whatever.
Yeah, what day that would
31st.
be? 31st.
Yeah.
But it won't be, obviously, because we're going to bump it to
Yeah,
Tuesday. We've already had that conversation. If it bumps to Tuesday, then you could conceivably start whoever you did start.
Yeah, that's true.
On the opening day. You could just throw him again on Tuesday if it works out that way. All right, that was an eventful day down in Sarasota, and I'm sure Stan or Luke or somebody's going to check in with us tomorrow to tell us a little bit more about it. All right, that said, it was a very pleasant night last night in Ann Arbor, and there's really not a whole lot to say. It's another night where I think Kevin Willard gets a lot of the credit because, again, every time Michigan made their push, and in the second half, he called some timeouts, and coming out of the timeouts, they were always sharp, and they always had answers. And when I do that, I don't want to take anything away from the players. I'm not trying to say Kevin Willard won the game by himself or something along those lines, but I think, the subtext you guys can understand. I get really frustrated when I see sometimes when, like, college basketball reporters say something on social, like, you sense that what they're really trying to say is, I remember something. I want you to realize that I remember something. I see a lot of people, in the college basketball world being like, this is Maryland's best team since 2020. And I think those of us that are here that know would be inclined to say, no, this team is better than 2020. Not because maybe the totality of what they have. If you want to say the 2020 team had at least a couple of options off the bench and this team doesn't, like I could hear that argument. But that 2020 team, as we've all kind of sort of wanted to forget, was starting to – they were showing the cracks down the stretch. They were looking like every other Mark Turgeon team when you got to the end of the season. And the subtext of the praise that I have for Kevin Willard is I'm not trying to take shots at Mark Turgeon. I have no – my God, he's been gone for years. But the reality is every time you watched a Mark Turgeon team, you found yourself saying, is the coach making the team better? Or does it really come down? And that was the Roy Williams argument for years, right? The Roy Williams argument was he got the players. It wasn't really Roy Williams that made them better. He didn't really draw anything up, or he just got the players, put them all together, was a great recruiter, and won. This feels different. This feels like the thing that we were used to in the Gary Williams era, which is the team's good, but the coach can also make a difference. And it's not foolproof, right? Like Maryland has lost games late, obviously. They lost buzzer beaters a few times this season. Not just the miracle from Michigan State, but Ohio State and Northwestern on the road. Like it's not like they've won every game that was close. But no one does. But what we've seen is multiple times where games that could get away from them, games maybe earlier in the season that we saw get away from them, like Washington and Oregon, we're seeing in those moments more functionality out of timeouts. And that's making us think maybe the coach is also making a difference. It's clear the five guys are outstanding, right? And not all of them are on every night. Rodney Rice was great last night.
Selton Miguel was...
Yeah, Selton Miguel playing excellent basketball. Another double-double from Derek Queen. Not every single one of them is having their best night every night. Sometimes they are. Sometimes all five of them are on. But the five of them are all really good. And the coach seems to be getting more out of them. And that's part of the faith that we have in this team going towards the postseason. The one, and I sort of alluded to it earlier in the week, there's a danger in, and I had it, this came up because somebody brought this up, and I don't remember who it was, and I apologize. When I say Maryland's not a Final Four team, they're a team that could get to the Final Four. Somebody said, well, why do you feel the need to make a difference? And I said, the difference is the expectation shouldn't be Final Four. That was part of the problem that team that I always complain about, and I can't remember what the 15, 16 team, whatever it was, the Rashid Suleiman, Diamond Stone, that group, is that we convinced ourselves before the season that was a Final Four team, and it took all of the joy out of that season because they were never going to be that. That was absurd, wildly unrealistic. And it took all of the pleasure out of watching that team. If what you're doing right now is watching through the context of this should be a Final Four team, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Or for a standard for a standard that it's not likely for them to reach. It's fair for some programs to measure. Like right now, if you're a Houston fan and you're saying this is a Final Four team, it's understandable that you'll be disappointed if that team doesn't reach the Final Four. They're that good. They really are. They're that good. It makes sense. if they don't get there, which is totally plausible because it's a tournament and goofy things happen in a basketball tournament, but if they don't get there, you're going to feel disappointment. And there's going to be no fortification that comes from, well, hey, we reached the Sweet 16. This Maryland team is not one of the 4 best teams in the country. They might have one of the 4 best starting 5s in the country. They might. In the argument.
Yeah.
I mean, probably not top 4, but, maybe one of the top 8. But they're not a top 4 team in the country. What they are is a hell of a starting 5, the good coach, and in a basketball tournament, anything can happen. And they could make a run to the Final Four. But I'm not going to set myself up for disappointment if they don't make a run to the Final Four because they're not that good. I still want to find joy in watching. I'll be disappointed if they lose in the first weekend, the same way that I was disappointed when the Gravis-Vasquez senior year team lost to Michigan State in the second round. That team fell short. Now, we all know what happened. It was a buzzer beater and heartbreak and the whole thing, but it was still disappointing. It doesn't mean it changes the way that I feel about Gravis-Vasquez. I love Gravis-Vasquez. One of my all-time favorite players to watch play. But I was still disappointed. That team was good enough to make it further than the second round. And this team, even if they're a 5 seed, they might not even be favored in the second round. But I'll still be disappointed if they don't make it to the second weekend because I think they're a Sweet 16 caliber team. But I'm not going to be disappointed if they lose in the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8. After that, everything becomes, you want them to win, obviously. We're doing this, you might as well. But I'm not going to allow it to suck the joy out of watching this team by calling them a Final Four caliber team. We don't need to change the calibrations. They have not accomplished things during the season that says that should be the expectation for this team. Last night is among their best wins of the season, and Michigan's a borderline top 20 team. That's the part of this that's kind of weird to speak about is, you get to this point, and I don't want to do the bit where, none of the wins matter, because they do. But what are the wins that have held up? That
And Michigan's been a lucky team as well.
Correct.
They've won a lot of close games, and they've
So what the best win that Maryland has might be the Wisconsin? We really think about it? Is that the best win they have this year? And I'm not trying. Again, when I say these things, I'm not trying to say Maryland's not good.
Still had at Illinois and at Indiana in there.
Yeah, but those, and I'm not. Those aren't. It's not that they're bad wins, and obviously being on the road they matter. But those teams have not. Indiana's a bubble team. Illinois is certainly not held up to be the team that we thought that they were. And obviously when Maryland beat them, they also were a little bit depleted at that point. And I'm not. None of this is me saying Maryland's not good. They've elevated above those teams. But for me to believe they're a Final Four caliber team, you have to have the tangible evidence of that. The evidence is this roster is so good, and look at everybody they've beaten.
UCLA.
It's not. I'm not saying it's a bad win.
Yeah, I guess
Wisconsin's their best.
Wisconsin's. Yeah.
Wisconsin's their best win. But they don't have the resume that says this is how you know they're capable of beating anybody in the country. You believe that starting 5 is capable of competing with most teams in the country, but you don't know that they're capable of beating anybody in the country. It sounds like I'm down on Maryland after a really good win. I'm not doing that. I'm just trying to tell you why it is that I'm keeping things in context.
Hates Maryland, hates the Orioles.
Yeah, right? No, I just hate having bad days. Maryland didn't have a bad day. They had a great day and a great win. But I'm not going to allow my expectations to suck the joy out of what it is that I'm watching. This is not Final Four or bust. This is a fun team that it's a shame doesn't have a little bit more depth. Because if they had a little bit more depth, then I might find myself saying, boy, they are deserving of being treated like that type of team. I'm not going to do the, hey, if they don't do that, then it's not that. That's not the expectation that I have for this team. Can we take a break, or do we need to call? You can go ahead and go ahead. That's fine. Mike DeCourcy is about to join us from Big Ten Network and Fox Sports. Great win. Really. There's literally, I don't know what you would try to take away from it. That was as good of a road win as you could ask for. Despite the fact that it wasn't by, double digits or anything like that. They were the better team, unquestionably. There was nothing fluky about it. There was no bizarre nature to it. You want to bring up the fact that they didn't have a field goal in the last 6 minutes? Sure, but it's the same thing that we talked about. They didn't have a field goal in the last 5 minutes against Michigan State, and they got back into that game and tied it up. This thing where points don't count if they're at the free throw line is a really goofy bit that we've done. Look at how great our defense is. We just fouled you instead of letting you hit shots. It's a strange thing. But yeah, they didn't have a field goal late. So what? They made free throws. They got a win. And defensively, they were very good as well. Let's talk a little bit more about not only Maryland's win, but where they stand now, getting ready for the Big Ten and the NCAA Tournament. One of our favorites. You, of course, see him on Big Ten Network. We saw him in the studio over the weekend. And he is bracketologist for Fox Sports. You read him at the Sporting News. He is our buddy Mike DeCourcy, and he's back with us this morning here on GCR. Mike, it's Glenn. It's great to catch up, man. Thank you for taking the time for us this morning.
Happy to do it, Glenn. How are you?
As you'd imagine, things are good here, right? A lot to be excited about around these parts. And I don't want to overstate it or make it seem like, hey, because Maryland went on the road and beat Michigan, you now know they could win a national title or something like that. But that felt kind of emphatic. Even for a game that turned out to be a two-possession game, they were in front the entire way. They were the better of these two teams and truly looked the part. They have not been, damaged by what happened against Michigan State last week. This just looks like a team that is doing the things you'd want to see them do going into the postseason.
Yeah, I think that I get asked a lot about the absence of depth.
Mm-hmm.
And my response to that is, and when I get asked about I should clarify, when I get asked about the absence of depth, it's usually in conjunction with, can it hurt them in March? And in the case of foul trouble, of course, it can.
Or
in
injury.
In the case of injury, of course it can. But in the case of NCAA tournament games, there's no better time to be not deep than that. If you exclude those two factors, there's no better time because what you face is a lot of games in which there are longer timeouts, longer half times, and so fatigue, while it exists as a factor, it's not as much a factor in March as it is in the regular season. And remember, the travel is less as well. You make one trip, you stay there, you play 2 games. You make another trip, you stay there, you play 2 games. It's not, okay, you make a trip, you play a game, you go home. Then you might make another trip and play a game and go home. And so it's much different in that sense as well. So it still is out there, and you'd like to have more options.
Yep.
But everything else, those 5 guys, when they stay out of foul trouble, they're a great group. There are very few teams in the country that have a better group than they do out of their starting 5.
Mike, the way I was just talking about this a minute ago, if you said, hey, predict how it ends for Maryland, what you just alluded to is, someone gets in foul trouble in the first half, it does catch up with them, they get the wrong crew officiating the game, and it gets tight, and they end up losing in the end. But to the point, I'm in utter agreement with you. I still don't know that I think that this is a Final Four. If I said Maryland's a Final Four team, I don't think they're that good because of the depth. I just don't think they have the depth to call themselves that. But are they a team that things can go right and they could win games and they could beat good teams? Yeah, I think they could make it that deep, but it's not the expectation that I have for this group.
Oh, understandable. There's no question about that. But after last year when NC State made the Final Four,
sure, right.
It's really hard for me to look at a team and say, no way.
Yep.
That it's really, and there are certainly teams that you look at and say they have a better chance of getting there than this group. But again, I feel better about them winning or making it to the Final Four, not winning it, but making it to the Final Four than I might have about them winning this league, say.
I understand that. I understand exactly what you're saying. Mike, a couple of things that also stand out to me about this team. Last night was another example of this, and I'm not – I don't say that. I use the juxtaposition not because I want to take shots at Mark Turgeon, but because we, as you understand, got used to watching a coach for years here at Maryland that always seemed to get more out of this group. And what has really stood out to me about Kevin Willard this season, I think of the Indiana game, even though it didn't work out in the end, the Michigan State game, and then last night, so many examples of a game where things start to go the wrong way, and then out of a timeout, everything's fine, and a team looks settled and is running what they're supposed to run and is doing it effectively, and it really looks like a coach that's making a difference on top of having a team that's very good.
Oh, I think there's no question Kevin's an excellent basketball coach, and that's been true from the very start of his career back at Iona on through Seton Hall and now here. He's done a wonderful job, and he grew up in the sport. He played it at a pretty high level at Western and at Pitt, and now he's getting the chance, and he's obviously worked with great people as well, like Rick Pitino. Yep. And so now he's getting the chance to call his own shots, and I think he's shown consistently over the years that he's a winner. The one thing he hasn't had the opportunity to do, really, and I think it's fair to say hasn't had the opportunity to do, is win in the biggest of all games, the ones that are played in the second weekend or the third weekend of this tournament. And I think that this is the start of him having that opportunity, having a player like Derek Queen, having a point guard like Jacoby Gillespie, having Julian Reese as a veteran guy. We had them on last weekend talking about them when I was at BTN, and I was so impressed by the fact that he went 2 of 9, I think, from the field, 2 of 10 from the field against Penn State, and a lot of players would just let that wreck them for the whole rest of the game. And he ended up, I think, with 15 rebounds, 6 steals, and 3 blocks.
Yep, incredible.
And that's the kind of winning performance that takes you a long way in March.
No doubt. No doubt, man. It stood out. And Julian Reese, Mike, has been one of my favorite stories in recent Maryland basketball memory, because there have been I don't know how many 4-year guys that you're going to have, right? I know Marquette's got a bunch of 4th years, but in college basketball, I don't know how many of these we're going to see. And the ups, the downs, the changes in coaches, the journey that he's had to this senior day on Saturday, and to your point, on days where it seemed like there was a lid on the basket on Saturday against Penn State, he was still maybe the most impactful player on the floor somehow. Just one of my favorite stories in recent Maryland basketball history, the journey of Julian Reese to now playing on what we're thinking are going to be very big games.
Yeah, I'm a big sucker for senior night / day. Yeah. I love senior, and I haven't gotten a chance to be at one for a while, and I think it'll be wonderful to see him out there. And as you said, senior day is a little different in a lot of cases now. For one, players often go through it and then come back and play another year. Mm-hmm. And for two, there's the fact that you have guys who played 1 year for your program. Now they are important and they made contributions and all that, but it isn't quite the same as when somebody came to your program and really grew up in it and had the difficulties and had the triumphs, and now is getting that final day in the spotlight. I think that will be a wonderful occasion, and I wish I could be there to see it, because he's had a terrific career at Maryland, and there are still some wonderful things to accomplish.
Mike DeCourcy with us here on GCR. Mike, your most recent bracket had Maryland as the last of the 5 seeds, and that was before, obviously, the win last night. How much movement could there still be based on what they do in the Big Ten tournament?
Yeah, I think they're now a 4.
Okay. Based
on the victory at Maryland, I think they're now a 4. They're clinging to toward the end of that line anyway. Mm-hmm. But Mizzou losing last night, and Michigan, of course, them taking care of them, helped move Maryland up to a 4. I'm not sure there's a lot more upside.
Right.
I guess 3's not totally out of reach because Purdue's one of the teams in front of you. Iowa State is one of the teams in front of you, has not been consistent lately. And not that recency matters, but you could continue to be inconsistent and add more losses to your resume, and then as a result, Maryland might pass you. And then on the next line, you have Kentucky, a little bit injured still. A&M, again, fairly inconsistent, but has a wonderful resume. It's really going to take a lot to ding that. So it may be hard to get to the 3, but it's worth taking a shot and seeing how it goes.
I asked this question. Our friend Patrick Stevens has brought up a couple of times. Is there any danger to, like, geography as far as, like, is there a world where maybe you're better being a seed lie down because it keeps you maybe on the East Coast, Providence or Cleveland, something like that, instead of having to go out to, say, a Denver on the opening weekend?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, it can make a difference. It can, because most likely, and on my bracket, Maryland would go to Seattle. If I were doing it today, Maryland would go to Seattle to open the tournament. And then where they would be placed post that, I'm not sure. But I know that Seattle is the one location, although it's a wonderful place to visit, it is the least desirable location for nearly every team that's in that picture, in that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seed line picture. There aren't many teams that are located near that. Right. And then beyond that, it would be probably Denver that would be not quite as desirable for some. But there are teams in the strong areas, Kansas, for instance, Arizona, for which it would be a preferred destination. Texas Tech would be another that might like being in Denver. So Seattle's the one that they could wind up opening the tournament. But the problem is that being down a line from there, and of course you have to lose some games to get there, doesn't help you because your 4s go with the 5s,
right? Or
5s go with the 4s. Right. So there's no plus to that.
Yeah. You'd have to fall down. You're talking about, like, if you fall down to a 6, maybe that could be geographically beneficial. But now you got to face, like, a really good team.
Right, and you have to lose games to get there, and you don't want to do that.
Right.
So there is a possibility if they could climb a little bit on the 4 line that they might have a shot at Providence. St. John's is going to take one of those spots if they continue to play well. But then I think the other one's going to be sort of a consolation prize in the bracketing game for someone, whether it's Purdue, which isn't that far, or Maryland, which would be fairly close, or even someone like Iowa State that there might not be any other spots available. It's either Seattle or Providence, and they'd probably take Providence. So, again, there's the possibility of if you climb on that 4 line, you could get the second spot in Providence, and that wouldn't be so bad at all.
Anything besides depth and that scenario that we talked about, foul trouble or an injury, anything else that concerns you at all about this team going into the tournament, Mike?
Well, in terms of winning and advancing, I think that we still have to see, and I think last night addressed it some, we still have to see how Derek Queen handles playing against the physicality that Michigan State presents. And not that he certainly can stand up to physicality and rebound with anybody. I'm talking about his offensive game, the ability to get downhill out of pick and roll, because they don't have the ability to space the floor with their bigs. Julian is a low post guy. Derek is a pick and roll guy, and he certainly can play in the low post. But that means there's a lot of traffic down there, so he has to be when he gets in the pick and roll and he drives it, which he does really well for a guy his size. I mean, when he encounters physicality, he's got to keep that dribble alive and show that he can sort of undo a defender, disarm a defender as he continues to bounce. Because he's not going to get past everybody. And that was what happened in the Michigan State game, was that he kept slamming into brick walls, and then instead of saying, okay, there's a brick wall, let's go around it, he'd say, okay, I'm stopped, so now I got to make a play. Mm-hmm. And the plays that he made in those circumstances were not usually very good.
I think that's fair, and something that I assume, again, this is the nice part about, like, all of a sudden feeling like I have trust in a coach, that you'd like to hope that they are better suited for something like that should it happen again next weekend. Mike, what all can we plug for you? When are we seeing you? And what can we? I mean, just give me the whole rundown.
Yeah, I'll be on BTN Saturday this week, and then again Saturday and Sunday at the Big Ten tournament. I'll be on the studio panel there. Although it's still funny calling a studio when we're literally
right on the
in
court.
The arena.
Yeah, right. Right
just
there.
never know what to call that. So I'll be there for that, and then my daily Fox updates, the seed updates, are available at foxsports.com, and my bracket will be posted tomorrow. That'll be my final weekly bracket Friday, and then I will start doing them daily, the brackets daily, starting March 12th, Wednesday. You'll see a bracket every day from then until Sunday. And then I've got a really cool piece up about the possible expansion of the tournament that I just did today. You can find it at TSN Mike or at sportingnews.com. TSN Mike on Twitter, I should say. Yeah. And I'm really proud of that piece, in which I destroy every argument my friend Seth Davis made a couple of weeks ago about why they should expand.
With respect to Seth, you and I are on the same line here, and they can yell at me and tell me that I'm an old man and screaming at a cloud, but no. Like, the reason why the tournament works is because there's a bracket, and a person that doesn't care about college basketball understands how to fill out a bracket. Don't make it more difficult for people. That's going to chase them away from this product that you love so much. That's my opinion about
Absolutely.
The subject. Mike, you're the best, brother. Always appreciate you. Thank you for hopping on with us this morning. Let's talk again soon, all right?
All right, you bet, Glenn. Thanks.
Mike DeCourcy with us here on GCR. Appreciate him taking the time. I for what it's worth, right? Like last night, the damage that Michigan did was inside, right? But you kind of knew that that's their story. It's Wolf, it's Golden, and they both got theirs, and it's not all inside because those Wolf obviously stretches out. And is an excellent passer. Like what a good passer.
And he's gonna be around next year too. So
yeah, he's gonna be a problem. I mean, unless somebody else wants to pay more money for him.
Some SEC team.
Yeah, right. Like somebody has some oil money they want to throw his way. It's funny because like you look at Maryland, you say that's their strength is interior, but it's a unique conversation when you have guys that just want to be physical. What does that do to this duo of Derek Queen and Julian Reese? Like when they're going up against guys that aren't interested in that game, that just want to play athletically, that plays right to them. But when you go up against guys that want to be physical presences, what does that do to them? And TBD. And you get to these big games in the Big Ten tournament, and the NCAA tournament. And look, they do obviously have to beat It's easy for us to look past Northwestern, but, Maryland lost to Northwestern when they played them the first time this season. So they've still got work to do on Saturday to make sure they don't trip up. Like, you can say there's nothing to gain in Saturday's game, but there is something to be lost. Like, losing at home to Northwestern would not be...
And they could still drop to the 5, right?
In the Big Ten,
Big
yes.
Ten, yeah.
Correct. In the Big Ten tournament that's not locked up yet, but they're a top 4 seed and getting the double bye. So they still have to take care of business on Saturday. Still to come today, we are going to chat with John Miller about his new book, The Last Manager, all about Earl Weaver. Postseason underway in public school hoops here in the state of Maryland. Find out everything, bracket updates, schedules, scores, results, anything you need to know by going to countysports.zone. That's countysports.zone, proudly sponsored by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. The race to College Park and the championships is underway. I think we're a week away, right? Aren't they not this weekend, but the following weekend is championship weekend, the semifinals and the finals?
The 14th,
yeah. I think that's right. So championship weekend down in College Park. Everything you need to know, find out, countysports.zone, proudly sponsored by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. All right, when we come back in, we will a couple other things I wanted to touch on from yesterday, and then obviously we'll talk to John Miller. It's Glenn Clark Radio.
March is a slam dunk at Live Casino. Catch all the basketball action and more at Sports and Social. Enter our $80,000 Dolce & Gabbana giveaway on March 28th. And catch the Baltimore baseball jersey giveaway March 31st. Take your shot at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland. At Arundel Mills, must be 21. Please play responsibly. For help, visit mdgamblinghelp.org or call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Driving in Maryland? Did you know an Easy Pass from driveeasymd.com can save you time and money? Of course you did, because you are a thrifty driver. An antenna reads your Easy Pass transponder and automatically deducts the toll from your Easy Pass account. Learn more at driveeasymd.com.
Treat yourself and taste the Baltimore tradition that is the legendary Costas Inn. Hey, it's Stan the Fan Charles. For over 50 years, the Costas Inn has been a Baltimore original, dishing out their amazingly scrumptious, fat, award-winning crab cakes and steamed crabs. Every season is crab season at Costas, so make your plans now by calling 410-477-1975 and reserve your taste of heaven. Sit back, crack some crabs, and watch the Ravens chase down another title on Costas' 15 TVs. On Monday nights, Costas offers their half-pound jumbo lump crab cake with 2 sides for under $30, and there are nightly specials Monday through Friday. So head on down to the Costas Inn at 4100 North Point Boulevard or visit them at costasinn.com.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
COVID-19 and flu viruses are circulating in Maryland. But don't worry, protection is within arm's reach. Protect your health with this year's COVID-19 and flu shots. It's safe and convenient to get them both at the same time. Flex your protection. For more information, visit health.maryland.gov/vaccines.
This message paid for by the Maryland Department of Health.
Coming back in here with Glenn and the other guy, Garrett, whatever his name is. You know who they are.
All right, back in here on GCR to continue on a Thursday edition of the program. Did you realize that Joey Bosa played for the San Diego Chargers?
Just so that's how long he's been around?
He's the last San Diego Charger.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was with the team.
Yeah, that's currently still. Or I guess, well, now there's no more Chargers.
Correct.
No more San
He
Diego.
was the last Charger that had played in San Diego, which is kind of wild when you think about it, because like,
when did they move to San Diego?
it wasn't that long ago that we're not still struggling sometimes. But then you remember like Lamar Jackson's rookie year.
Yeah.
That game was in the soccer stadium in L.A. Like, it's been that long since the Chargers moved out of San Diego. And, yes, there are still some of us that struggle and sometimes default back to calling them the San Diego Chargers. But I did not realize that. Obviously, the story yesterday, Joey Bosa released by the Chargers. Joey Bosa is still only 29 years old, for what it's worth. Joey Bosa has seen a decline. And the question is that decline, is that just who he is? Part of it, he's been hurt. Missed a lot of time in both 2022 and 2023, but he played the majority of the season last year and finished with 5 sacks, playing in 14 games. Before that, played in 14 total games between the 2 previous years and 9 total sacks between those 2 seasons. He hadn't played a full season since 2021, where he did have 10.5 sacks that year. I don't know what the reality is for Joey Bosa. The truth is that it is an extraordinarily thin edge rush market. And that every time we get our hopes up that you could trade for someone's top-notch edge rusher, these guys just don't become available. They are too important to teams. Like, we want to keep believing that, obviously, it's not going to be Max Crosby, right? Like, the Raiders locked down Max Crosby yesterday, so take that name off the list. But you want to believe that those guys can be had. The Ravens got their guy. It's just that they got him off the scrap heap at a point in his career where we thought he was shot when they got Kyle Van Noy. So Joey Bosa? No is the answer. But it's a qualified no. If we're at the point where Joey Bosa doesn't want money anymore, or if you're at the point where, like, nobody's interested in Joey Bosa and he's just sitting around, then yeah, of course. But if you're actually competing with someone for Joey Bosa, that doesn't make sense for the Ravens at this point, unless, again, like the Harbaugh to Harbaugh connection, or like the people with the Chargers are like, dude, we know Joey Bosa is going to be great this season. We just decided we're not going to spend money there. Unless there's some inside information that you have, the answer is no. You're not prioritizing or spending money on Joey Bosa. You've got bigger fish to fry than someone who you're not sure is still an impactful football player. The Kyle Van Noy thing worked out for you, but that doesn't mean that every one of these guys is going to be Kyle Van Noy. The more likely scenario is they're not. Yes, it worked on that one. And to be fair, it worked on Jadeveon Clowney when they brought in Jadeveon Clowney at that point. But to assume that all these guys are going to do that, to make them priorities, no. They're guys that if you get through the first rush of free agency and you realize that the market is depleted and that there's just not a whole lot of interest in Joey Bosa and you can do it for a song, then hell yeah. By all means. But to prioritize it, no. No. And like I also saw the DK Metcalf, everybody, like, guys, we're falling into that trap. It's funny because I couldn't get people to bite on the Devontae Adams stuff yesterday and Would You Rather Wednesday. I just couldn't do it. But then all of a sudden I watched the rest of the afternoon play out. Like, and everybody wanted to bite on like DK Metcalf. Hell yeah. Well, yeah, we all love DK Metcalf.
Well, is it because it's like is it because it's just the new it's the new thing that's like it's like, oh, Joey Bosa wasn't available before, but now he is. Devontae Adams had been more or less available since the start of last season via trade block, and everybody was talking themselves out of it.
I don't know, maybe. I mean, I think there's an age factor there that like is part of the conversation as well. Like DK Metcalf still very much seems like he's in the prime of his career and getting. We talk about a prototype. Like, hello, this is the prototype. Nobody looks the part more than DK Metcalf looks the part.
Maybe DK is not a good. He doesn't fall into that category because you want DK Metcalf.
Yeah, 1,000% you want DK Metcalf. There's no comparison to Joey Bosa at this point. The player ain't the problem when it comes to DK Metcalf. The player's the problem on Joey Bosa. The player, you 1,000% want to have DK Metcalf. Every team should want to have DK Metcalf. And I'm not even trying to make it so that DK Metcalf is Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase, but he's in that next group of receivers. You absolutely want to have that guy. But the cost, just not practical. I mean, it's just not. There's no world where it's practical for it to be something that the Ravens are going to do. Which, again, doesn't mean that I'm not interested. Doesn't mean that, like, if somehow they decided to throw it off, like, this is what we're doing. Come hell or high water, we want DK Metcalf. Okay. I mean, I ain't going to be mad. If that's their offseason, like we weren't able to get Ronnie Stanley back. We had some money. We had extra draft assets. We just decided we were going for DK Metcalf. Well, you're going to have it.
That's certainly a much better would you rather.
I mean,
DK versus Ronnie.
I mean, but like, you got to add in the draft cost. I mean, like it's not just Devontae Adams is a free agent. You're not getting DK Metcalf for just the money. It's the money and the draft assets that you're going to have to trade in order to acquire him. Is that what they said?
A 1 and a 3. I think that's what. I mean. Obviously, that's what you ask for.
Yeah, I mean, I'd certainly be willing to pay a 1. In a vacuum, is DK Metcalf worth a 1 and a 3? Yes. Unquestionably worth it. You're tight against the cap. You need your assets. Look, the Ravens don't need all of the draft picks that they have. We say that every year. They have, 11? They're not gonna be putting 11 guys on the roster next season. But that first-round pick still remains pretty valuable for trying to address the issues that they have. In that world where I say you can't go out and you're not getting that edge rusher the way that you want to get that edge rusher. The Raiders weren't trading Max Crosby. Well, then you got to keep trying to swing with draft picks in order to find that guy. So, or if you lose Ronnie Stanley, you're going to need to draft a tackle. So the first-round pick is still tough for this team to give up. But, look, man, it's DK Metcalf. I'm a fan. Like, I can't hide from that. All right, we are into the 11 a.m. hour here on GCR on a Thursday edition of the program. Still to come today, we're going to chat with Will Schaller, Maryland Lacrosse stud, about their 5-0 start. I got this book finally on Monday. I got the PDF version of the book, and it's a good read. I mean, like, this is not a 100-page book. This is a 300-page guy, and I finished it up last night, and it is an outstanding read. You guys know sometimes I start books just to read enough that we can have the conversation. This time it kept me. I was wrapped. It was a really, really, really good read. The book is called The Last Manager, How Earl Weaver Tricked, Tormented, and Reinvented Baseball. Joining us now here on the program, the author of that book, longtime writer for Wall Street Journal. He is John Miller, not the broadcaster John Miller, John W. Miller, and he is with us this morning here on GCR. John, it's Glenn in Baltimore. It's great to chat with you, man. Thank you so much for taking the time for us this morning.
Glenn, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for your honesty, too, and that's the highest praise that people got through the book, because that's who I wrote it for, as the reader, and I didn't want to write a boring book.
We do these, as you'd imagine, and what we do these all the time. And there are a lot of times where I've kind of got to lie, and I kind of have to go through this is really interesting, when I will then turn around and tell everybody that listened I did not finish that book. I will tell everybody straight shoot, I finished this book last night. I got through, and I kind of got through the depressing part where he came back, and he was a shell of himself in the 1980s. But there's one question, John, that I came through, and I'm sure this was the purpose of what you were trying to do. I keep coming back to, so how good of a manager really was Earl Weaver? And I know that you're answering that question with the book, but I feel like the point of the book is also that you're explaining why that isn't an easy question to answer.
It's an unresolvable question. Nobody in baseball, for all the analytics and all the sophisticated analysis, has sort of solved the puzzle of what makes a great manager. But I can say this, and this is relevant for your listeners, for people in Baltimore. Earl Weaver was on top of the American sports world in the 1970s. I mean, baseball was the dominant sport, and Earl Weaver, his Orioles won the most games of any team. As a manager, he won the most games of any manager during his career during that time. He still has the highest winning percentage of any manager since 1969, of any manager with over 1,000 wins. So if there is a case to be made for a great manager making a difference, it's Earl Weaver. And I think for younger listeners, you can't imagine what a great showman this guy was. I mean, think professional wrestling, married with the best team in baseball, married with Baltimore folklore, working class grit. I mean, he stood for something. He stood for the ethos of a city, and a winner, a winner standing up to bullies from New York and Boston.
Can I say this word? I'm going to say a word about the book, and I don't want it to sound like a pejorative to you, but folksy to start the book. Like the stories of his upbringing in St. Louis and his wild family had this really folksy appeal. It was the right kind of folksy to me that captured me at the part of the book that wasn't about Orioles legends and maybe might have been more. And I was really intrigued by the path of how Earl Weaver got to becoming a minor league baseball player, and obviously how everything was based around his failure as a player, or maybe not his failure, but not being given the opportunity to go to the major leagues with the Cardinals in that spring training. I loved. I mean, it read like a movie when that first started the book.
Yeah, and here's a guy, again, he got to the top of the sports world, but where did he start? He started in Depression-era St. Louis, crowded streets, taverns. His uncle, who was a father figure, was a bookie. He was hanging out with, basically the mob, and he came from this tough part of a tough American city, and was a brilliant young athlete, much better than people realized, had a legitimate shot to major leagues. When he did make it, it made him very depressed. It made him drink too much. He really fell down, and it was a long purgatory in the minor leagues before he got back to the big leagues with the Baltimore Orioles and became a great manager. But yeah, the struggle there, I think, is very relatable. He wanted to be a player. He failed at his life's biggest dream, which is to be a big league baseball player. So the book's also about what do you do when your biggest dream fails? How do you get back up? How do you fight your way out of that? And yeah, I mean, I think he understood Baltimore because he came from a similar type city. St. Louis, also a port city, also a tough working class city, and also, you know, a culture saturated with gambling and drinking. And that's the way people lived back then. And he came from that world and carried it with him his whole life as he went into the modern world and revolutionized baseball.
John Miller is with us again. The book is The Last Manager. It's available this week, and we'll link up on our Twitter account at Glenn Clark Radio how you can find it on Amazon. John, one of the fascinating parts, we, of course, always associate Earl Weaver with pitching defense, the 3-run homer, and you bring that up, but I knew that he had evolved as a manager. I don't think I realized how deep into his career, that for when we talk about Earl Weaver and the 3-run homer, I don't think I realized how much of his managerial career was still based around small ball, and it didn't come quickly. Like, he didn't force that immediately. He really did evolve to that place over a long period of time.
Well, here's the thing that's extraordinary. I mean, first of all, he managed for 14 years before he quit the first time, and you can't name many managers who've managed that one team that long. I mean, it's very, very special in baseball history. Most managers get fired pretty quickly. And so over 14 years, he essentially had 3 teams. There was the super team, Frank Robinson, Brooks Robinson, that went to the World Series 3 straight times. Then there was a team in the early 70s that was very focused on pitching and defense. Those teams bunted a lot. I mean, partly because they had Mark Belanger, who was a terrible hitter, but they played small ball essentially. And it was when Earl Weaver, I called them Earl's genius teams in the late 70s, the teams that had John Lowenstein, Gary Reineke. He basically took a bunch of parts and made them into a championship team with strategic innovation. And he basically decided to stop bunting. And that was when pitching defense and the 3-run homer became the philosophy. Before that, it was more pitching and defense. And he evolved. And that's what makes him a great character, along with his, you know, rags to riches story, is that he was always never afraid to question himself, never afraid to change his mind, never afraid to try new things. He was the first manager to use a radar gun. He came from a racially charged environment and then evolved when he got to Baltimore, helped Frank Robinson become baseball's first black manager. This was a man who was not afraid to change, and I think that makes him an inspiring character for all of us.
I agree with all of that. I think the other compelling part about that, you referenced, the times where he just simply got out of the way. Like the times where, you know, some of his best managing was, don't screw it. The players are literally doing the opposite of what I want them to do, but I'm not going to screw with it. I'm just going to let them go, which, you know, somebody would say, well, that's not really managing at all, but that's exactly what needed to happen in those moments.
I think that's an incredible example of what leadership is, because leadership is wanting other people to do well, and he was not making it about himself. So Orioles fans I've mostly forgotten this, but the Orioles won the AL East in 73 and 74. And in 74, the players weren't happy. It wasn't working out with Earl. He was kind of slumping as a manager. They had like a coup where they met at Paul Blair's house, and they decided to run the team themselves behind Earl's back, essentially. And they designed their own signs, and they did it all themselves. And they went 28-6 to close out the year, and they won the division. And Earl just let it happen because he realized that he wasn't doing a good job and he had to get out of the way. And it wasn't about him. It was about the players. And so I think it's an incredible example of, the flexibility of his leadership. And he tolerated dissent. He let people speak his mind. He would chew them out, but then he would forgive them, and he never held grudges. He didn't lie to people. I think it's an incredible example of sort of the quirky nature of leadership.
Yeah, I thought it was fascinating and something that I had totally blanked on and wasn't part of my memory bank. John, a few of the big picture questions that I think the book addresses, and Earl himself deals with, like do we need a manager, or can a computer just do all of this for us and tell us what should be doing in these situations? It's a fascinating story where we deal with this now when we talk about analytics, and there's a frustration. You referenced the 2020 World Series in the book, but here in Baltimore it comes up all the time. Like, why are you putting this guy in this spot when the pitcher seems to be rolling, and it just feels like the manager doesn't really have a choice. Like, I'm not here to be the one to make the decisions. The decisions are coming from the data. I just have to be the one that literally walks out to the mound. That's my job. And it's good for baseball in that we acknowledge the data, but is it also bad for baseball in that we lose, to the point, the characters, the Earl Weavers of the world that made America fall in love with aspects of the sports?
Absolutely. Again, I think the closest comp to what Earl Weaver meant in American culture might be professional wrestling. And Bill Burr, the comedian, even compared Earl to Hulk Hogan. And Peter Pasquarelli wrote that Earl in Baltimore was like Elvis playing Vegas. He would walk out to argue, and the whole stadium would rise to its feet. So yes, we have lost that. And about your question about analytics and the manager's role, I mean, today's managers they're more like middle managers. They're more like coordinators who are liaisons between the players and the GM. You're right, they carry out the GM's battle plans, if you will. And they don't have as much power as they did in Earl's day. And I interviewed a dozen contemporary managers and asked them that question. And they were kind of jealous of the power that Earl had. But at the same time, like, it went too far sometimes. Like, managers in the old days could punch players and not have any repercussions. I mean, there was a kind of dictatorial element that, players feared them because they controlled their destiny. But I think what we've lost, and I talk about this in the last chapter where I interview all these current managers, the part of the job that's about human motivation, human passion, understanding what makes young athletes tick. I think I think it's openly addressed now. I mean, why are teams hiring all these mental skills coaches? Because they know that all the computers, they can't make somebody care about playing hard. They can't make somebody try harder. But a great manager can. I think a great manager can push his players, can push the buttons, can motivate them, and that's what Earl Weaver was so good at. I mean, for all his like coarseness and vulgarity, he was a brilliant motivator of players, and he really drove them to become the best they could be.
John, I thought was interesting about in that chapter that you referred to, talking to all the current managers, is that their opinion is that Earl Weaver still would have worked in this era, and Earl acknowledged a couple of times, and you reference it, that as baseball changed, as there was more power, it was a struggle for him. And so it was sort of fascinating to say, like, this is the reverence we have for Earl Weaver, is that even as the sport has changed, we still think he would have evolved with it.
He definitely lost his mojo at the end of his career, but I think it was more he was just burned out personally.
Yeah.
I think he would have been really good at one thing that's part of the current task list of a manager, and that's to triage all the data and information that currently comes out of the front office and pick out what's important for players to get and not overwhelm them. Because in all the data, I mean, there's a lot of baloney too. Like, there's a lot of really useful stuff and a lot of stuff that it's still a very physical game where talent, matters more than brains in a lot of ways. And so choosing what information to give, athletes who are not very well educated often, who are young, and distilling it for them, I think is a really valuable role of the manager. And I think Earl would have been great at that because he was such a shrewd tactician and a hustler, always looking for an edge. He loved, playing poker and games, and he loved gambling. He loved like figuring out what the odds were. And I think he would have been great at, again, taking the available information these days and using it wisely and not just like swallowing it whole.
One of the most compelling stories from the book to me, the complicated relationship shared between players and Earl, where they hated him and they loved him. It's a dichotomy that's very hard to understand. You capture it well, and obviously Jim Palmer at the center of it, but like these guys would be infuriated by him. They would think like awful things about him, and yet they deeply loved and cared about the man.
Yeah, and again, the paradox of Earl Weaver is so many things. He would go years sometimes without talking to players. He could be really mean to people in the moment and then just forget about it the next day. He had this strange philosophy that he would be a lot meaner to players who were playing well, because he said, the guy who has 2 hits, he has a third hit in him, and I'm going to like push him to get that third hit. The guy who just struck out twice, I can't do anything for him. So he was on players if they had ability, he thought they could maximize it. He would leave guys alone if they thought they weren't that good. But then he would also be sort of subtly flexible. Like Eddie Murray was a sensitive kid from a family of 9 kids, or more than 9, maybe 13 children. And so Earl was kind of sweet to Eddie and left him alone and was not as hard on him because he realized that was not what was going to help Eddie. Whereas, Jim Palmer was this spoiled kid he was so wealthy he grew up playing catch with his butler. And he realized that Jim would benefit from somebody who was tougher on him. And they fought, and they were like a married couple that could never stay happy, even though they had a bunch of kids in a nice house. I mean, Earl won the most games during that time. Jim Palmer won the most games of any pitcher in the American League. So they were on top of the baseball world, on top of the sports world, but they could never, not fight. And, Palmer famously wrote a book about their relationship called Together We Were 11 Feet 9. And they would have all these battles. But in the end, I mean, the love was from the clarity of vision and the sincerity of Earl's motivation, that it was never about him. It was about the players. It was about the team. And because they came to respect that integrity, that as they played for other managers who would play clubhouse politics, who would, stab them in the media behind their backs. And Earl never did that. Earl had this kind of integrity where he would yell at you, but the next day it was forgotten. And again, it was always about winning the games, not the taking credit.
If you had done 3 more chapters just about Earl Weaver cooking, by the way, I would have read every single one of them. Like that, every anecdote about Earl Weaver in the kitchen, I couldn't get enough of during the course of the book.
I was very happy for the listeners. I found recipes, and I didn't include all of them in the book, so maybe I can do
another. Yeah.
So, but that also, like, for a working class guy who never went to college, he had all these kind of like mysterious depths to him. Like, he loved to garden.
Yep.
He could quote Shakespeare. He just knew things that he would just pull out from behind his earlobe of like information that would just stun people, and that's why he was beloved by intellectuals like Roger Angell in the New Yorker and Tom Boswell in the Washington Post, because he had this like wisdom and philosophical depth that really grabbed people's imagination and attention and made him beloved and a folk hero in Baltimore and around the country. I mean, he was really famous in America in the 70s and 80s.
Oh, a legitimate piece of Americana. There's no question about it. John, if I could, I know you're based out of Pittsburgh. You played baseball at Mount St. Mary's, correct?
I did, yeah, in Emmitsburg, class of '99.
And I know part of it was that you wrote the obituary for the Wall Street Journal, but for you, just why this was something, years removed from Earl's death, obviously at this point, why this was something you wanted. This was clearly a project. Why you wanted to invest so much time and effort into writing this book.
So I grew up in Belgium. My mom's from Catonsville, but I grew up in Belgium, and I love the Orioles because I discovered the Orioles on trips to America. And my grandfather would send me cassette tapes of WBAL radio, and the broadcaster, his name was John Miller, which is my name. And so I fell in love with the Orioles that way. Of course, I'm 47, so as I came of age, the Orioles were terrible.
Awful.
And I would read about Earl Weaver, and it was kind of like living in Rome in the 3rd century and reading about Julius Caesar. I mean, it was this sort of glory. And then as I became more serious about baseball and played in college and coached in my 20s, I was just, fascinated by the brilliance of those teams. I mean, they were the best team in baseball for a long time. And I was just curious about where his genius, his strategic edge came from, basically. And I knew about the fights with umpires, the theatricality, the one-liners that were so funny, like the we're so bad right now. Back-to-back home runs means one today and one tomorrow. I mean, just his capacity with the language was so funny and so fun. And so when he died, the Journal called me and said, we know that you played baseball in college. You're an Orioles fan. Would you like to write his obituary? And that was 2013. And I just marinated for basically 6-7 years. And when I started doing the book, I mean, it was definitely like a calling almost, something I knew I had to do.
That's really cool, man. I by the way, the Ron Shelton stuff about it being theater, like, because you really do, like, you go back and you writing out like the Bill Haller stuff, you realize like how quick-witted, like, people just don't talk like this anymore. Like, it was so quick-witted, and while it wasn't maybe brilliant or cutting, it really did like read as though it had been scripted somehow.
They went on for over 3 minutes. I mean, nobody has the verbal dexterity like that anymore. I think we're so focused on technology and our phones, and this was a culture where people would just gab for hours in bars and go at each other. And I think it's really, it's entertaining. And like Ron told me, like, as soon as they start responding to each other's cues, it becomes theater.
Yeah.
And so Ron Shelton, of course, wrote the movie Bull Durham. Partly the fight with the umpire that Kevin Costner has is based on the Earl Weaver fight with Bill Haller. And, Ron played baseball in the minor leagues in the Orioles system while Earl Weaver was the manager. One part I did not put in the book is that the Orioles used to play the Rochester Red Wings every year, and Ron got a hit against the Orioles. And in the papers the next day, Weaver said, that kid Ron Shelton's a pretty good second baseman.
Oh, wow.
And Ron was thrilled with that.
That's really cool. That's really, and by the way, the comp there, right? Earl was a second baseman and was a minor league second baseman. How about that? That's a really neat comp. John, it's fun. Can I leave you with this? And I ask this question. It comes up a lot in what we do. In diving in as much as you had with Earl cared about the data deeply, but Earl also had the ability, he had the power to make his own decisions and sort of go with the gut. And there's very few like Bruce Bochy still seems to have that power and can't help but notice he's won a bunch of World Series in recent years. Do you come away from all the work that you do with Earl saying we need the data, but maybe we need more flexibility for managers to also be able to have the power to make their own decisions and not just do what it is that data tells them to do?
I think that's fair. I think Earl would probably say that it's all about having the right 25 guys, and that in-game decisions probably matter less than fans think. I think he would probably say that it's who you pick at the beginning of the season that's going to determine how well you do during the year. At the same time, I mean, I think he would be into like data-driven decision-making. I think he was just really smart, and I think he was so obsessed with winning, getting an edge, that if he thought that, using computers to figure out that taking your starter out in the 5th inning would win games, I think he actually would do that because he cared about winning the games most of all. And I think he would have been a great synthesizer of data and the real world. And I think that ultimately is what great managers and people like Bochy do, is that they don't discount the analytics, but they combine it with reality and forge that into, decision-making that accounts for both the human element and the numbers.
John, it's a phenomenal read, man. I mean, it really is. I can't give you enough credit. This is outstanding, and not just for Orioles fans, but baseball fans, and to the point, like fans of Americana. This is an incredible read. I know you're on Twitter. It's at JWM Journalist, correct?
Correct. Yep.
And is there anywhere else that we can guide people other than just say go pick up The Last Manager today?
I have a website, johnwmiller.org, and I know the book's on the cusp of the New York Times bestseller list, and the cutoff is Saturday night. So if you can buy the book before Saturday night, that'll help out too.
That's great. John, congratulations, man. It's an awesome read. Thank you for taking the time for us this morning.
Thanks for having me on, Glenn.
John Miller, and I mean it. Again, I'm not, John's off the air now. I can say whatever I want to say. It's incredible. I mean, it really is an incredible book. Thorough. Stories that, and look, I was born in 1983, so I didn't live the bulk of the Earl Weaver era in Baltimore, but I had conversations with Earl Weaver in my life, and I certainly have done a lot of work trying to study and learn more of that era, and there's still lots in there that just fascinated me about Earl Weaver and his place in Americana. And like Earl Weaver baseball, the video game. There's a whole chapter in there about that. It's a great read. It's a great read. The Last Manager. It's available right now. One thing we haven't talked about yet, because we were dealing with the negatives, the Orioles at the top of the show, there is some other Orioles news today. They have announced this year's class of the Orioles Hall of Fame. Unsurprisingly, our friend Adam Jones is leading that class of the Orioles Hall of Fame. There's nothing to say there other than incredibly well-deserved, and just glad that the Orioles and Adam Jones have gotten to a place where he is back involved, and we were joking with him the other night. He joined us on The Fan, community ambassador and special advisor to the general manager, and you might have seen that they shared out a social media clip where they gave him an actual business card that has that entire title on the card, and it's pretty funny to read the entire. It's like the Dwight Schrute assistant to the regional manager or whatever. But yeah, very happy for Adam, and really happy that he's in this place with the Orioles. He's not going to be around all year. He's acknowledged that. Like his family's really enjoyed living in Spain and spending time in Europe, and that's going to continue, but he'll be around more often. And that will include being here this August to be inducted into the Orioles Hall of Fame. And then two other inductees to the Orioles Hall of Fame. Joe Orsulak will be inducted. I love Slack. That's my guy. Certainly someone who's been part of Orioles lore and stayed in the area and did a lot of broadcast stuff, and a very popular figure, a solid player, happy for Slack. And the great Tom Davis is going to go into the Orioles Hall of Fame. Of course, no one ever better at reading a grocery store circular than Tom Davis, man. Like, made it content somehow, some way, to just tell you what the specials were at your neighborhood Mars. And growing up, man, straight shoot. My parents listened to Rouse & Company on WQSR, Good Time Oldies, and I wanted to be Tom Davis because he got to come in and just hang out with the gang and do all the wacky bits, but then do sports. And Tom has been a ubiquitous part of Baltimore sports over the years, and clearly, when you think of the Orioles, you do think of when you think of Tom Davis, you certainly think of the Orioles and all the years that he spent in the infancy of Masson, hosting the pre- and post-game shows. Tom Davis joins Adam Jones and Joe Orsulak in this year's class of Orioles Hall of Famers. Congratulations to Tom Davis. The other thing that we saw, we had asked the other day what the spring breakout roster might look like for the Orioles. Yeah, it ain't Kobe Mayo and Heston Kjerstad. It's just the prospects. So Enrique Bradfield is part of it, and Samuel Basayo is still part of it, but not the guys that are major leaguers. Those guys are not part of it. Max Wagner, Griff O'Farrell, Dylan Beavers, Judd Fabian. Right, we talked about that. Vance Honeycutt is part of that. The pitchers, Nestor Herman, Luis De Leon, obviously.
Pat Riley.
Yeah, Pat Riley. Not right. Former Miami Heat coach Pat Riley, obviously. Not an overwhelming group of pitchers, but
everyone was excited about Pat Riley when he got here. He was the one of the Phillies guys. Is that what?
I think that's it. I think you're right about that. Cam Weston is on that group, but it's not the guys, not the guys that are major league players. It's guys that are definitively prospects that'll be part of that spring breakout game that they're going to play against the Yankees as they announce their spring breakout roster today. So, yeah, that's the Orioles news. That's more pleasant than the Orioles news from yesterday. That's what we got. We come back in. Will Schaller, Maryland Lacrosse, stud defender. They're 5-0. They just beat Notre Dame. He'll tell us all about it when we come back in on Glenn Clark Radio.
Driving in Maryland? Did you know an Easy Pass from driveeasymd.com can save you time and money? Of course you did, because you are a thrifty driver. An antenna reads your Easy Pass transponder and automatically deducts the toll from your Easy Pass account. There, you just saved money with Easy Pass, all without slowing or receiving a notice in the mail. Well done, thrifty driver, well done. Get your Easy Pass at driveeasymd.com.
Treat yourself and taste the Baltimore tradition that is the legendary Costas Inn. Hey, it's Stan the Fan Charles. For over 50 years, the Costas Inn has been a Baltimore original, dishing out their amazingly scrumptious, fat, award-winning crab cakes and steamed crabs. Every season is crab season at Costas, so make your plans now by calling 410-477-1975 and reserve your taste of heaven. Sit back, crack some crabs, and watch the Ravens chase down another title on Costas' 15 TVs. On Monday nights, Costas offers their half-pound jumbo lump crab cake with 2 sides for under $30, and there are nightly specials Monday through Friday. So head on down to the Costas Inn at 4100 North Point Boulevard or visit them at costasinn.com.
Make the most out of every day in your Toyota RAV4, available in hybrid or gas-only models. A RAV4 can get you where you want to go in style. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new RAV4s from your local Toyota dealer today.
The latest edition of Press Box is available now. On the cover, Glenn Clark and I sit down for a Q&A with Orioles owner David Rubenstein, discussing what he learned from his first year as owner, his goals both on and off the field, and his involvement in baseball decisions. Also inside, Brooks DeBose profiles new Oriole Tyler O'Neill, and we meet college lacrosse players from around the state. Press Box is available for free at over 500 locations throughout the region, including 60 Royal Farms stores. Or you can read the entire issue online at PressBoxOnline.com, where you can also find great betting advice and the best daily coverage of the O's, Ravens, and Terps.
Need a trophy or award that's as unique as the achievement? Look no further than Crown Trophy. With locations in Owings Mills and Gaithersburg, they specialize in custom trophies, plaques, and medals for any occasion. From sports and academic awards to employee recognition and corporate gifts, visit crowntrophy.com today and let them help you create a lasting memory for your school, team, or business. Crown Trophy is a proud supporter of the Maryland Public Secondary Schools Athletic Association. crowntrophy.com.
One of the things that's definitely wrong with this country is that this dude still has a job somehow, some way. Glenn Clark.
Should also point out that when the Orioles do the Adam Jones Hall of Fame induction, they're doing a special bobblehead that day, and it's Adam Jones getting ready to pie someone. So I think that one is going to be very popular with Orioles fans and probably difficult to get your hands on, and will probably go for a lot of money on the internet. But yeah, Adam Jones pie bobblehead the weekend of the Hall of Fame induction, which I think is great. All right, it is a Thursday edition of Glenn Clark Radio, and I should remind you that if you missed Stan and Luke before they headed down to Florida earlier in the week, you can find it at facebook.com/PressBoxSports, youtube.com/PressBoxOnline, or PressBoxOnline.com/video. Happy birthday to our buddy Andrew Stecca.
Oh, happy birthday, Stecca.
29? Still not allowed to quit the Picks League. Did not win the league, nor did he avoid losing in spectacular fashion.
So then what'd you get him for his birthday?
I don't know. I might.
That'd be the eternal gift, I guess.
Got a really disturbing text from Andrew Stecca last night.
Oh, really?
You know I love Andrew. That's my guy. Hang on a second. Andrew texted me last night and said,
happy birthday,
watch
Andrew.
3 or 4 episodes of Running Point with the wife last night.
Oh, he did. Okay.
It's not great television, but it's still a fun show in the same way her last show was. I assume that means Mindy Kaling, because we were talking about Mindy yesterday. This time with adults. Clearly the show that he's referring to is the Sex Lives of College Girls, which I watched because Mindy Kaling's a good showrunner, but made me feel kind of creepy because it was about, now, in fairness, these actresses are not 18-year-old girls. Let me make that they were playing college freshmen, but there's just a weird creep factor to it. The budget was not high based on some of the sets. Jeannie Buss is a producer on it, I learned today. It's not so glowing that it makes me say, oh, I have to, but
you have to.
No, I don't have to. I just could see it being maybe something that I ultimately end up being like, oh, hell, fine. The show's been enough of a character.
I've seen your titties on the internet, so I can't really take you serious.
Dynamite stuff. Look, I like Mindy Kaling a lot. I even stayed with Sex Lives of College Girls because it's a good enough show, even if it's not for me and there's some cringe to it. It's a well-made show, so I've stayed with it. But this is testing me, dog. This is testing me, trying to convince me that I should watch Running Point. The worst trailer in television history. All right. We had to do this a little bit earlier on because of their schedule. They got a game to get ready for on Saturday, but an opportunity to talk with a man who had some big-time highlights in their game on Saturday, Maryland Lacrosse defender Will Schaller, native of Bel Air, right here on GCR. I know the way that it works is by this point of the week, you got to move on and start thinking about the next game, but I'm still not really over what a scene it was down in Atlanta this past Saturday as Maryland and Notre Dame in front of 10,000 people played an absolute thriller with Maryland coming out on top. And this dude, man, did he take his Wheaties on Saturday. Holy crap, did he make a couple of incredible plays in this game. He is Bel Air native. By way of the Hill School, he is Will Schaller, and he is with us this morning here on GCR. Will, it's Glenn in Baltimore. It's great to chat with you, man. Thank you for taking the time for us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Glenn. It's a pleasure.
Dude, I know you guys are Delaware-centric. I understand how this works, but indulge me if you don't mind. That scene, and you've played in lots of big games, but two teams nowhere close to home, playing in front of a crowd like that in a city that's not traditionally thought of as being a lacrosse hotbed, although we know Atlanta has become more and more of a lacrosse stranglehold. But what was that like for you guys? Everybody talked about, obviously, the championship game from a year ago and it being a rematch, but just that atmosphere in that place on that day, how do you describe it?
Yeah, I mean, it was incredible. Terp Nation was there, strong and ready to support us, so we're always super fortunate and grateful for that. And again, you can't beat 70 and sunny, great crowd from both teams in a matchup like that we kind of have marked with an X on in a big red circle on our calendar every year. And again, it's all of that, but it's also not making it more than it is. Sure. Right? We understand that it's a lacrosse game, and we're going to have one next week and the week after that. And, hopefully all goes to plan for the next 2.5 months. But again, like I said, super fortunate to have that opportunity to play down there. Guys like Braden Erks that get to play on their home turf. So it's awesome for those guys. And, shout out to the guys who put it on down there. Georgia Tech, obviously, for hosting us. It was a fantastic experience. Hopefully something we can do down the road in the future.
Yeah, they don't give you a national title for being number one after 5 weeks, but it doesn't hurt to be number one after 5 weeks. That's not a bad thing. Will, what does going up against Chris Kavanaugh? What does that do for you? And you faced so many great guys, but that matchup, it seemed like it really brought the best out of both of you.
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome. He's a great player. He plays really hard and with a lot of intensity and a lot of emotion. So I got to tip my cap to him. Obviously he got his a little bit in the game, and that's kind of how playing those type of guys are. They're going to do whatever they can do to win, and we just got to do the same back to them. You know what I mean? And hopefully, when the final whistle blows, you're where you want to be. And I think one of the things that has been working in our favor is just the preparation we put into it every week and our ability to play as 6/7 guys out there on defense, right? Like, the better we can play together and as a whole defense, the better we'll be, right? It's not just one guy out there taking it to the goal every time and in a 1v1 fashion, right? It's about all of us. And to that point, it's about the whole team, right? Everyone knows their role week in, week out. And I can't give enough credit to all 50 guys in our locker room for understanding what that role is and executing it. So, again, I'm super grateful for them and all that they do for us week in, week out. And again, what happened on Saturday happened. And like you said, now we're moving on. Being 5-0 in March isn't going to win you the big one. So it's the continuous climb.
All right. For people that don't know or haven't seen the play, Griffin's got it. I think we're going to show it to everybody right now. Third quarter scramble. And this happens all the time in lacrosse, right? Where you're just in these scramble situations. Can you walk me through what's going on in your brain in this moment that you're like, oh, Logan's out of the cage. I got to go be the hero right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, it starts off with me giving Logan a better pass here. Put him in a little bit of a tough spot. And, I wasn't thinking anything about being a hero. I'm just thinking, look, we got to stop this ball from going in the cage. And obviously you got a little bit of that hockey background shining through a little bit, just blocking shots, putting your body on the line. And, instinct just kind of took over at that point. Whatever we can do to stop that ball from going in the cage and get it up to the offense is our job. That's what we do. That's what we signed up for. So, again, I would be lying if I said adrenaline didn't take over a little bit there and just try to make a play on it however I could. And again, 9 times out of 10, that one probably goes in.
Hey, man, this was the one. Yeah,
right. That's right, and we'll take it. We'll take that one.
This is the one. All right, so rank for me as a defender, pole goal, yard sale, diving in to stop what should have, as you point out, 99 times out of 100 been a goal. Rank those 3 plays as far as what's most electric and what gets the most yelling and screaming when you watch it back in film during the week.
Well, I mean, I think it's 1A, 1B, 1C, right? Yeah. It doesn't matter. And again, I think the all-encompassing idea and what gets everyone going the most is getting the win when the final whistle blows. So, and again, that's a whole team effort that I'm super grateful for and happy to be a part of. But again, yeah, all those things are great. And again, like we lean on those guys who kind of bring the energy for us. And we need that from everyone week in, week out. And that's kind of how we define our culture and our team and what we bring to the table and what everyone else has to play against, right? So the more of a group 50-man effort it is, the better we will be.
I should probably have added to that list laying out to get the backup at the end of the game to get the ball back, because that one didn't suck either. That one had to feel pretty good at the end in order to make that happen. He's Will Schaller, and he's with us here on GCR. Will, as we've referenced a couple times, right, like what's still ahead of you. But for you uniquely, right, you come to Maryland with the intent to win national championships. That's the way that it works. That's the expectation of the program. How much are you feeling that in this moment where, like, there are guys you play, they've done it, right? Like, Logan did it, and as good as, my God, was he good on Saturday, by the way. Like, there are guys that have done it. How much is that driving you? Like, it's time for me, it's time for this group of guys to etch our names in the list of players that have won national championships at Maryland.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that's in the back of our mind, and it's, the top of the mountain that we all want to get to, and that's the end-all be-all goal, right? But we understand that we just got to take care of business this week. Go 1-0 this week. Go 1-0 the following week. and from here on out. So again, it's not going to be perfect. We're going to have to face some challenges, some adversity. But the more we can just be process and goal oriented as opposed to outcome oriented, the better we'll be. Obviously, I'd be lying if I said that wasn't on all of our minds, because it is.
Right,
That's like you said. That's why you come to Maryland. That's why you want to play in these big games. It gets you ready for situations, like the Final Four. But again, taking it step by step, right? We're not going to win the national championship on Saturday. It's 2 months and 2.5 months down the line, right? So just kind of keeping things simple and continuing to get 1% better every day. That's kind of our goal, our motto. So that's where we're at right now.
Can I ask? I called the Loyola game earlier in the year, and I think a lot of people were like a little bit surprised by how tough that was for you guys. In hindsight, do you feel like going through something like that for this team maybe helped for close games that you're going to play throughout the course of the season, that like we had to be in a tight spot and work our way out of it when on a day where maybe you didn't play your best on the whole as a team, and you had that experience to fall back on when clearly, like this past Saturday, you were in another tight spot against a really good team?
Absolutely. I mean, that's huge for us. Like going through that adversity and kind of breaking the seal of being in tough spots is huge. And, we try to do our best to simulate that in practice. And, obviously I'd be lying if I said we want to be down at half for the past 2 or 3 weeks in a row now, but we are. And we stick together. We, work as a 50-man unit, and we crawl out of that, right? So obviously you want to be on top when the final whistle blows, and you do everything you can to get there. But understanding that adversity is going to happen, and the better we handle it and the more we stick together when it happens, the better we'll be. So yeah, I think the Loyola game and is a huge example. Like, they're a good team, and playing at Ridley is very it's tough. It's tough. You know what I mean? It's a tough environment. It's hostile. But that's nothing but adding to kind of notch the belt in terms of what we've been through and what we've been through together. That's kind of what I'm emphasizing there, is how we stick together and how we continue to push through in our climb.
I want to know a little bit more about your path, Will, right? Like a kid from Bel Air. Tell me about how it ended up being the Hill School and what that did for you to prepare you. And did you always know that you wanted it to be Maryland? Like, were there other schools that you had thought about? And what was the reason why you decided to come to Maryland?
Yeah, so hockey took me to the Hill.
Okay.
I was a hockey player. So that's kind of, what I thought I wanted to do, and kind of take that path. And then, September 1st, junior year rolls around, and I obviously always played lacrosse. My dad was a Penn State alum. He played lacrosse there. So I always grew up playing, obviously, in Maryland, against, ironically, the guys that are now my roommates' teammates.
Yeah, sure, right?
Guys we play against every week. But, you get a call from a guy like Coach Bernhardt on September 1st and, saying maybe you wanted the opportunity to play at a place like Maryland. And again, it's hard to turn down. And I didn't know if I was growing up in Maryland, like I didn't know if I was a Maryland guy at first. And obviously my dad being a Penn State guy.
Sure, right? Yeah, that's a little awkward, right?
Yeah, there's a little bit of friction there. But at the end of the day, I had that gut feeling when it came to this place and the people that are at this place. And that's the most important thing, right? Their idea of being the best in everything that we do. And committing to that kind of brotherhood that lasts a lifetime, right? It's not just the next 4 years of your life; it's the next 40, and that's what that's what really resonated with me the most. And it's been nothing but an honor and a privilege to be able to be down here in College Park and wear the colors. So I've really got nothing but good things to say about my time here and about everyone I've come across, and I'm excited for the rest of the year and next year.
That's awesome, man. Do you ever have like the thought? We've seen a lot of lacrosse players, right? You mentioned Coach Bernhardt. We think of Jared, obviously, who did this, and Pat Spence. Do you ever have a thought that like maybe there could be a fifth year and you could still scratch that itch to play hockey? Does that come, or is that like completely out of the equation for you?
I think those days are behind me.
Okay, all right.
I wish I could say that maybe there was a hope, but I think those days are behind me.
I can respect that, and look, it's working out all right for you. So I think that decision's okay. And then going into this week, do you guys have to have the conversation of like, hey, that was great, but like we've got to figure out a way to be as up for Delaware as we were for Notre Dame on Saturday? Do you have to have that conversation with the guys, or does everybody just know that? Is it just second nature to you all at this point?
I don't think it's second nature. I mean, I think it's we know what this type of week can be for us, and so I would say it's a little bit of an unspoken understanding, but at the same time, like we got to be the more mature team, right?
Yeah.
We can't look at the number that's next to Maryland's on the rankings, right? We got to be the same Maryland with the chip on our shoulder, underdog mentality, every week, no matter who we're playing, right? So, we know we're going to get their best, and Delaware is a really good squad. So, we gotta approach this week in the same way that we do Notre Dame or Virginia or Hopkins or Penn State, whoever it is. So that's kind of where we're at mentally, with attacking this week, and just understanding that nothing's finished yet, right? Nothing's finished, nothing's proven for us. And it won't be until we're done, hopefully on Memorial Day weekend.
I see the E9. Are you a golfer?
I'm not. This is not much of a golfer. I'll hack it around every once in a while, but that's not usually my thing there.
Dude, I had to give it up, man. Like, it was just I would keep going out and playing, and it'd just be so embarrassing for me.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. I hear you. You want to be good at everything, right?
Like, why am I putting myself through this? It's miserable. I'm just gonna go play tennis, man. I can do that. I can't do this. I appreciate it. Will, where can everybody be, Maryland fans, be giving you a follow? Are you on Twitter? Are you on Instagram, anywhere like that?
Yeah, both those. Just my name, number. So again, just try to keep it, about the team and about what matters out on the field there in Maryland Stadium on Saturday. So.
Will, you're a hell of a player, man. It's a lot of fun to watch you play. Looking forward to what we see the rest of the way. Thank you for taking the time for us this morning, man. We really appreciate it. We look forward to doing it again, all right?
Yeah, thank you very much, Glenn. It's been a pleasure.
Good stuff with Will Schaller. Appreciate him taking the time for us today. And a lot of college lacrosse content available in the new print issue of Press Box, which is on your newsstands at this moment. You see on the cover, David Rubenstein, Stan the Fan, and I had a sit-down conversation with the owner of the Baltimore Orioles, but also inside. Profile of Tyler O'Neill, college lacrosse. A lot going on in this print issue of Press Box. Available for free at your neighborhood Royal Farms, any of the hundreds of locations around town where you find Press Box. You can read it all, PressBoxOnline.com. But pick up that new print issue of Press Box today. When we come back in, fighting words. We did talk about, obviously, the fight on Monday with Jeremy, but we'll talk a little bit more about that and what's next. And UFC pay-per-view this weekend as well. So Griffin will guide us through all that when we come back in. It's Glenn Clark Radio.
COVID-19 and flu viruses are circulating in Maryland. But don't worry. Protection is within arm's reach. Protect your health with this year's COVID-19 and flu shots. It's safe and convenient to get them both at the same time. Flex your protection. For more information, visit health.maryland.gov/vaccines.
This message paid for by the Maryland Department of Health.
Whether your focus is luxury and comfort, convenience and technologically advanced connectivity, or sporty performance and aggressive styling, we've got the perfect Highlander for you. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Highlanders from your local Toyota dealer today.
March is a slam dunk at Live Casino. Catch all the basketball action and more at Sports and Social. Enter our $80,000 Dolce & Gabbana giveaway on March 28th. And catch the Baltimore baseball jersey giveaway March 31st. Take your shot at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland at Arundel Mills. Must be 21. Please play responsibly. For help, visit mdgamblinghelp.org or call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
The latest edition of Press Box is available now. On the cover, Glenn Clark and I sit down for a Q&A with Orioles owner David Rubenstein, discussing what he learned from his first year as owner, his goals both on and off the field, and his involvement in baseball decisions. Also inside, Brooks DeBose profiles new Oriole Tyler O'Neill, and we meet college lacrosse players from around the state. Press Box is available for free at over 500 locations throughout the region, including 60 Royal Farms stores. Or you can read the entire issue online at PressBoxOnline.com, where you can also find great betting advice and the best daily coverage of the O's, Ravens, and Terps.
Contrary to what some people believe, I actually like this guy when he sleeps. Glenn Clark, talking sports.
All right, back in here on GCR as we continue along on a Thursday edition of the program. I've been telling you a little bit about it, but our friend Brian Powell and Steffi Samir, some others, they have organized an event to benefit Pete Medhurst's family. It will be Thursday, April 3rd, 5 to 8 o'clock at the Flugel Alumni Center in Annapolis. There's going to be a Q&A with Keith Mills and Bill Wagner, who, of course, have been very connected and involved with Navy sports and Anne Arundel County sports. The cost is $100. It's going to be a great event, and again, it's going to raise money for Pete Medhurst's family in their time of need. So if you got questions, you want to know how to get involved, reach out to Brian at bgpowell with 3 L's, bgpowell at AOL.com, and he can tell you a little bit more about it. You can get your tickets for that event on Thursday, April 3rd. Now, it's a Thursday, so that means it's time for...
It's Fighting Words with Griffin Bass.
Go right ahead.
Jump right into it.
Go right ahead.
So we did talk about it a little bit on Monday with Jeremy. And I guess Jeremy was more of kind of indifferent, I guess, because he just said he's just straight up not like a big Tank fan. He's
not a Tank fan. He also
fan.
said that he does think the Tank should have lost the fight.
I think I agree because of the knee. I mean, that's the It was a very disappointing performance.
It really comes down to what you think of the knee, right? Like, if you think the knee was in response to action in the fight, then you absolutely think the Tank should have lost the fight. If you buy the idea that it is actually related to this grease in his hair and unrelated to the fight, then you can understand a referee trying to use discretion and not knocking him a point for that. But
so I kind of buy both, I guess, if there's a way to say that. I don't know. I mean, like, I think there was crap in his hair, and because he does run over and asks his corner to wipe his face, which is also, that should be illegal, I think. I guess I don't know. There's so much gray area here.
It's certainly not something that I have a lot of background with, is how do you handle this particular situation in a fight?
Still overall it was pretty disappointing from Tank. That round did seem to, because Tank ends up winning the round. That was probably one of his better rounds in the fight, honestly. That was round 9 when that happened. I can play the clip. I guess we don't really need sound, but like if you hadn't seen it, so there, like, it's not like. Yeah, Roach is just kind of like slowly touching him up with the jab, and then Tank decides to just take a knee, and it doesn't make like that. And that when your knee goes down in boxing, it should be ruled a knockdown. And in boxing, that the way that works is that it should automatically become a 10-8, and so the round, and at that point there's still 2 minutes left here, so anything can happen over the next 2 minutes of this round.
I don't know. I got to think through it, right? Should it be that if something unrelated to the fight impacts the fight, like we've seen I'm trying to think of a comparison for this. If someone throws something from the crowd and it hits a fighter, then I think we say it's okay, right? Like, we stop the fight. Now, what you would say is, well, you have control of whatever crap is in your hair. That's your choice to do all that. So if it costs you, it costs you. But is that what we really want from a fight? If we believe it to be real, then do we really where
he takes a knee?
It's something that's not really related to the actual fight. To the point, like, Tank wasn't in trouble in that moment. He didn't take a knee to get out of trouble.
Yeah, he was backing up towards the towards the I was gonna say cage, towards the end
the ropes.
Yeah, towards the ropes. But it was also like
he wasn't
trying like
he also wasn't on the ropes.
It seemed like he was like planning this, like he was just trying to like get out of Roach's way, and Roach was like, "Oh, he's backing up. I'll push forward," and then he just takes a knee.
Mm-hmm.
And the ref and Roach are both like, "What is that? What is that?" Wait, like neither of them, as is no one like the broadcast didn't know what to do. No one knew. Like they're like, "What is that? His knee went down. So is that a knockdown?" And I mean, yeah, it does. It significantly changes the fight because if they rule that a knockdown, it's a 10-8. It's not like Roach really did anything else the rest of the round. So maybe you can argue that it's just a 10-9 even for Roach or whatever, or a 9-9. I don't know how. I don't know how you can end up scoring it if you want to like tank a point just for that round. But maybe in a lot of situations it just stays at 10-8, and then Roach probably wins this not going away, but he wins this on all three scorecards because it goes from 2 scorecards draw. A draw.
I'm in a tough spot.
And that's kind of where I'm.
This also goes into the argument that people make that like when you're fighting the champ, you have to beat the champ, and there should be different scoring for that than.
And if they do make it obvious it's a knockdown, then I'm sure Tank over the next the final 3 rounds changes his
potentially,
because he did not look good in the final 2 rounds.
No, he did.
2 rounds.
He 100% did.
100% Roach rounds.
I don't think this is a crime. I don't think this is a robbery. I think there is absolute argument for Tank lost the fight, right? I think there's an argument for it. But I think treating it like this is a stain on boxing or something along those lines, we do that for our own edification instead of having an adult conversation about what might have happened. Now, it's such a gray area related to the rules. When we say, you're voluntarily taking a knee, that's a knockdown. Well, but again, then what happens when someone do we know definitively that the rules say that if somebody throws something into the ring and you dodge and take a knee, that we can't say, well, that you didn't get hit, you took a knee. We're playing with the literal definition of a rule instead of trying to consider the spirit of the rule and whether or not we think that there is legitimacy to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not ready to go. And this isn't like a homerism thing. This is I'm not ready to go there. I'm listening to your argument that everyone is making that Roach should have won the fight because I'll listen to it. But I don't think it's that simplistic. I don't think this is like one of those things where somebody legitimately won the fight. All the data says they won the fight. You go to the cards, and suddenly the judges say they lost the fight, and you're like, dude, why are we watching this sport? I think there's actual gray area here that is difficult to adjudicate, and I'm not.
I agree. I still don't know. I still don't know really how I feel about it. Honestly, the logistic or the looking at it, it does not look good. It's like, why is this guy?
But it also doesn't look like, I'm telling you.
And I don't know how much.
Every time it doesn't look like he's in trouble.
Right.
If he was in trouble and took this knee, then it's way different to me. It's way more of a, there's no way that can be allowed.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't look like he's in trouble.
And I don't know how much we go into this. We know that Tank is a minus 4,000 favorite, whatever it was. And it's like, this guy just didn't.
But the draw didn't help. That didn't help any. Nobody's bets were satisfied by a draw.
Obviously, unless someone bet a draw.
Yeah, correct. And if you did, my God, yes. I can't imagine what the odds were for that.
At the end of the day, I mean, you score that round at 10-9 for Tank. That round 9 at 10-9 for Tank, and I end up. I come out to a draw as well. So I think we got the right result. As empty as it leaves us all feeling coming out of that. I think
the real problem being it leaves us feeling a little bit emptier about about Gervonta Davis.
Yes,
that's the real issue here. The issue is this was not supposed to be a marquee fight. This was supposed to be just the fight to get back in the ring and set up the marquee fight. And now he's clamoring for a rematch. It feels like you have to do a rematch. And that's not really what we wanted for Tank Davis. We didn't need more Davis Roach. Now, it was a decent fight. It's not like the next fight's going to be a bad fight.
Yeah, it started a little bit slow. Tank was doing, the minimum of kind of what he needed to do to get by in the early rounds, and then, Roach just didn't go away. For lack of a better term, he was kind of a cockroach. He just wasn't going away. He wasn't. He wasn't.
You're not wrong.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah. So Tank, as you said, he said we'll rematch. I think soon.
Yeah,
was
he was talking about like doing it in May.
Yeah, he said
That's
possibly the end of May.
Yeah, that's not happening. Stop it. That's
Unless
not.
It is.
It's not happening.
Yeah. So who knows what's
like?
next.
That sounds like the type of thing that like I want attention, so I'm going to say that and pretend like I can still keep this on pace for there to be a big fight at the end of the year. No.
Yeah.
No.
So I guess nothing really massive on the horizon at this point, at least in terms of the Tank Davis sphere, like Shakur Stevenson.
Right.
He'll probably end up fighting, a similar guy that he's a large favorite over.
Yep.
And
Most likely scenario.
We're pretty much we're pretty far removed once again from Tank Shakur Stevenson.
What it is, man.
The other news yesterday was the TKO partnership. I guess I don't know what a lot of the details still feel murky, and I don't know exactly what this is going to look like when it's all said and done. But yeah, Dana White and Turki Al-Sheikh announced that they're creating a boxing promotion under the TKO umbrella, and that it's going to be the #1 boxing promotion in the world, and it's going to be more like the UFC. I think is what Dana
that's what
has
we need.
in mind.
We definitely need more. If you want to solve boxing, make it more like the UFC.
Well, in terms of when you say, when at the in MMA, you say who's the best 155-pound mixed martial artist, everyone knows it's Islam Makhachev, and he's the UFC champion, lightweight champion too. So I mean, I guess on paper, it's like, yeah, if you can do that, I guess it would be good, I guess, for boxing.
No, it would
It's
not.
better to have. So Dana's argument is that we don't want to have 5 different belts: the
right,
WBO, the WBA, the PB.
That's all well and
whatever.
good, but that's the problem is then he's been able to strong arm fighters into bad contracts, and this is the UFC works for Dana White.
Mm-hmm.
That's who it works for, and for his partners. There's a reason why Francis Ngannou said, I'm not doing this anymore. Because the UFC doesn't actually work. It works in bully tactics and people that are willing to put up with them. And life is good for me, so who cares? It's not a good thing for the sport. It's a good thing for the powers that be. They think they've got the most money now because they've got the Saudi arm, so they think they can bully people into come join us. And it will be interesting to see the amount of success that they have with that. There's cultural conversations that are going to be difficult. TKO has primarily been for a white audience. We got to have that conversation. Boxing, the primary audiences have traditionally been black, Mexican, not your typical white American audience. Traditionally is the wrong. Traditionally it was. Obviously years ago. Years ago it was very much that audience. In the last few decades, it's not been. So from a business standpoint, beyond the strong arm bully crap, they'd still have to prove that they can reach out to different communities and bridge that gap. I think they have enough business sense to know that, and they'll do that, but it is something that has to exist. You can't sell me on the UFC is the way for it to be. No, the UFC is the way to try to shut out and monopolize.
Monopoly is the right word.
And that's not, like, it sounds good because then you sell people on, well, you don't want to have alphabet soup. You don't want to have all these champions. You want to know who the best one is. But it's not been good for the fighters. It's not been equitable for the fighters. They've been forced to wear certain gear. They've been forced to wear, you can't do this to profit. You have to do what we tell you, or you're out. And then because we have the monopoly, it's not going to work for you. So it's a tough line. Someone would say, well, it's still better for the fans. Well, yeah, I guess. Except for if you can stomach all of the crap. Like, if you're willing to stomach all of the nonsense.
For the people that are just going to hold their nose because
and
they work
and you just
want to
watch the fights, right?
Yeah.
Then absolutely. It'll be fine for you. Like, it was fine for me in my 20s. I didn't think about that stuff. When I was Griffin's age, I never concerned myself with any of those things. I get it. And it's not even a knock. It's just we all are different places in life. And exactly what you said, I just want to watch a fight.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care about any of that other stuff. And then you get to a point where it's harder to do that. And I don't even care about I'm not even talking about the politics. I don't care. I mean, they could all walk out and, and wear MAGA. I don't care, by all means. It's funny. I say I don't care about the politics. It's about the business politics. It's about the stuff that just don't smell right. The stuff that
the monopoly of the industry and the treatment of the
correct
athletes.
Yes, and the number of times that the UFC chose to sell out over making money versus doing what was right for a sport. The UFC, I get it. It's become, in this political climate, like this thing that a certain amount of people have reached to and said, they're showing you how to do it, because we're not willing to have a deeper conversation. They're showing you how to not get... The way to get over on people is to get over on people. It's to win. It's not to do what's right for people. It's to get over on them. That's the nature of... And somebody would say, hey, man, welcome to America. Welcome to capitalism. Like, that's how this goes. But that's a deeper conversation. It's not... I'm not excited about it. It doesn't... The thought of it's better on the whole for the sport.
Yeah, and I mean that's that's the good point that you're making. Like, it is, like, it's, I guess on the surface you can say, I guess that, it sounds like they have good intentions, but when you have Dana White attached,
but they definitely have good intentions. They have intentions to succeed in business. That's what they have intentions for.
Well, I think they're trying to make, like, boxing seem more
they want to profit off. No, they want to profit off of that. Their only goal is to profit off of boxing.
But they're trying to pitch like it's.
They want you to believe
that
it's about creating a boxing league that becomes the predominant, and all of the fighters that you like will all be here, and all of the bet. That's what they want you to
be on Netflix
right.
or whatever.
They want you to believe that's what it is. But the goal is not to better boxing. The goal is to do whatever they can to profit. That is the goal.
Yeah.
Singularly.
And Ariel Helwani painted the picture pretty well yesterday too. Like, so what it feels like is, since the cons are involved, like it's WWE, UFC, boxing. Like, what it could look like is probably TKO will, like, take over cities or something.
Well, they're already doing some of that because they also apparently have. And is it bull riding that they own as well?
Yeah, PBRs. Yeah.
So they're already doing that where, like, they're trying to create weekends where there's a bull riding, UFC, and a WWE, something like that, all on the same weekend. And for cost cutting, I can understand the value of, like, hey, we've got the same people can work all of these events for, like, setting up the stage and all that sort of stuff. And so, from a business standpoint, it makes sense for them. But why? Who is saying to themselves, oh, hell yeah, man, I've got to be in Kansas City this weekend to see bull riding and UFC and WWE?
And maybe it's a smaller boxing thing on the Sunday then, instead of, bull riding, but on the Sunday,
I'm not saying there's
SmackDown Friday, right. UFC, whatever.
There's definitely probably someone. I say definitely, probably. That's a contradiction. There's probably someone who's more inclined to say, I'll go to a boxing, UFC, and WWE card all in the span of 5 days in the same city. That person probably exists, but I mean, there's a lot of boxing fans that are like, I'm not going to watch UFC. There's this constant belief that
what, fight fans are fight fans?
Yeah. And it's just not always the case. Like, go show up at a place that shows both boxing and UFC cards and see how different those crowds look. Which doesn't mean that gap can't be bridged when they do this. They absolutely can try to bridge that gap, but it's not as simplistic as just all fight fans are fight fans. Like, we say that as we're doing our fight segment where we cover both topics, but that's because we're not going to do much more of them during the course of the week.
Yeah. All right. And I mean, yeah, it's just, again, it's all just so murky. Like, Dana is sounding very modern politic-y, where he's like, our model says this is great. It's going to be great. It's going to be the best that anyone's ever done.
Yes. People are telling me, I keep hearing. Nonsense.
And then UFC 313, the good stuff. This weekend.
If you say so.
This is one of those cards that reminds you why you love the UFC. This is a pretty good card. It's pretty stacked top to the bottom to the top. With going to be competitive fights throughout the night, and it is of course headlined by Alex Pereira. He is looking to defend the 205 belt against Magomed Ankalaev. And the odds, I was pretty shocked by him. Like Alex Pereira is, it's essentially, or it was a pick'em at some point. I think Pereira is like a slight favorite. He's like minus 115 or minus 120.
You think he should be a bigger favorite?
I mean, yeah, because he's defended the belt 4 times now, or I guess 3 times. He's defended the belt 3 times. He's won it 4 times now, and it's just we haven't seen him. We saw him lose to Izzy, and it wasn't a fluke, but no one has challenged him like Israel Adesanya has, and it's hard to see. I mean, I guess they're showing a lot of respect to Magomed here because he is, as you can tell by his last name, he is Russian, and he is he has that wrestling background, and the way Magomed wins this is it's very boring for 5 rounds where he just lays on top of Pereira and just kind of does not let him up, and that's because he doesn't have a submission game. He's got some power, and most of it's through ground and pound. But Pereira's just so big. I just don't see him kind of getting smashed by Magomed here. So I do like Alex Pereira here. Maybe it's again I've seen him fight more recently, and he's looked very good more recently than Magomed. Magomed has he's kind of got a hilarious career arc in the UFC because his record is 21-1 and 1 no contest as well. So he's got 1 draw and 1 no contest in there. His only loss was his UFC debut 7 years ago to Paul Craig, where he was beating Craig for literally every minute of this fight until the final second when Paul Craig was on his back and he just threw up a triangle. And apparently it was tight enough that Magomed had to tap in the final second of the fight, just kind of almost inexplicably because he didn't go out, like the referee wasn't even able to separate them before the horn even sounded. So Magomed never went out in this fight. He just decided to tap at the 4-minute 59-second mark of the 3rd and final round. So that is his only loss in the UFC. And then he had this whole ordeal with Iwan Cutelaba, which was very funny back in 2020. So Cutelaba is a weird guy. He's the guy that used to paint himself green, and then he would scream like he's the Hulk. And so he was very funny. And he got knocked out by Magomed. Like it was a standing knockout where he was dazed on his feet, and then the ref stopped it because he was out on his feet and he was about to fall over. And this was in the first minute of the fight, and then Cutelaba was like, no, I was messing with him. I was messing with him. I wasn't actually knocked out. I was pretending. I was trying to lure him in. I was trying to lure him in.
What?
And Magomed's like, all right, fine, we can run it back. And then COVID happened right after this. So and they decided they still wanted to run it back, and so they didn't run it back until October, November of 2020, and so that was essentially an entire year of Magomed's career wasted on this guy because the same result happened. He knocked him out in the first minute of the fight. Again, the next time.
Okay.
And then a couple more wins for Magomed. He finally gets his title shot against Jan Blachowicz, and it's a very grueling kind of long fight where again these are both guys that are very kind of cerebral and slow, low output guys, and that ends in a draw back in 2022. Which was just funny because Magomed got Magomed. You can make an argument that Magomed won, I guess, but he was very upset that he lost, and he just is kind of like, I don't know what to do anymore. This is dumb, and it sounded like he was gonna retire. And so the UFC was like, okay, well then you're kind of boring. You're a kind of boring fighter anyway, so we're gonna we're gonna move on then. And so he was all sour about that, and then he did come back, and then. Almost the same thing kind of happened with Johnny Walker that happened with Cutelaba, where they were fighting in Saudi Arabia, or no, Abu Dhabi, and it was an accidental knee to Johnny Walker, and so they had to call off they had to rule it a no contest because he downed Johnny Walker, and Johnny Walker has probably been the most knocked out fighter in UFC history, and so the doctor comes in and he's like, Johnny, do you know what country you're in? And John, he's like, again, he's been knocked out probably more times, and also the most extravagant knockouts ever, where he just flops on the ground. Okay. And so he's like, so
I've given you too much leeway here. I've given you way too much leeway.
I gotta paint the picture here for Mago.
I appreciate it, but it's too much. It's too much.
Anyway, Johnny's probably got brain damage, and
good.
That.
This is the pleasant stuff, as you were saying.
As I was saying, yeah. And he's just like, we're in the desert, and the doctor's like, yeah, we can't let this guy keep fighting. So they run that one back as well, which was another 6 months of Magomed's career kind of just wasted on Johnny Walker, where again he knocked him out in the second round in the rematch with Johnny Walker, and blah blah blah. He got another win, and now Magomed gets his title shot here. I just don't.
Okay, this is all your
I'm
way
very
of saying
confident
you think Pereira's got it.
Yeah,
So,
and hopefully the fight isn't cursed because
All right,
that's what it seems like.
yeah.
You
You don't get to go as in depth on the other. You got to do a 2-minute version.
Well, we got
of the rest
Justin
of the card.
We got Justin Gagey
Yeah.
versus Rafael Fiziev here, and Justin Gagey kind of speaks for himself. You know, he's amazing, and he's an underdog. I don't get it. Rafael Fiziev. So I was bummed last week. Or at least when I came in for Fighting Words, I was bummed last week because Dan Hooker fell off the card.
Mm-hmm.
Rafael Fiziev stepped in, and the good news is that Justin Gagey's still a part of it. It's gonna be an absolute banger of a fight because even though Fiziev and them fought 2 years ago, it was a fantastic fight when they fought the first time. I don't imagine it'll be any different. But I like Gagey a lot in this one at plus money. I think he was plus 140 last night. I'm not sure how much it's moved at, if any, but it seems like he's going to go in as an underdog, which just, again, blows my mind because Fiziev has not fought in 18 months. His most recent fight was he tore his ACL in the fight, so that's why he's been off for a year and a half. Gagey has been more, he's perpetually active. Obviously, this might be, I guess I should have looked at it, but it's probably one of his longer layoffs that I can remember because his last fight was the Max Holloway fight at UFC 300 where they threw down and then Gagey got knocked out at the end. So I guess that's why people don't like or are fading Gagey here. That's the only thing I can think of is that our last visual of Gagey was him getting knocked out, and Fiziev was he lost because he tore his knee up. But I don't trust him coming back from first fight in a year and a half coming back from an ACL. So I do not trust that. I like Justin Gagey at plus 140. In this one, and then again, the rest of the card is pretty good. We got Curtis Blades is on it. Bobby King Green is fighting new up-and-comer Mauricio Rufy at the opener of the main card. It'll just be a fun night. So I like Pereira, I like Justin Gagey, both of them straight up. I'll give you the Dos Santos parlay as well. Because we have two Santoses fighting on the early prelims. So if you parlay
Dos Santos, got it.
Parlay Jordan Santos and Myron Santos, get even money, minus 110 on the Santos is the win. I also like Joshua Van to win. He's an exciting flyweight on the prelims as well. You can parlay him with probably Curtis Blades. You can parlay him with Rufy. You can parlay him with Carlos Leal. I like Joshua Van to win as well, and 313 should be a pretty fun card.
We started strong. We limped to the finish. It happens.
How do I make? Well, I mean, I don't know how to make Magomed interesting. I guess
that's what it is. It's what it is. Sometimes
interesting if you've been following it the whole time.
Yeah,
he's a weird guy.
It's a hard sell. It's a really hard sell.
No one knows much about him, and he's just got weird things happening to him in the octagon all the time.
Very good. Let's get a tidbit.
What about Elimination Chamber?
It happened. I said we don't need to do WWE. We have a WWE podcast. We don't need to do WWE.
Well, I'm not on the WWE podcast.
Right. So what do you want to say about it?
Man, it was crazy.
All right. Very good. Now,
what's gonna happen next?
Hey, Stan and Luke, they're on their way to Sarasota. They'll be bringing you coverage every day for the next week or so make sure you're following along. PressBoxOnline.com, Facebook.com/PressBoxSports to check it all out. And it's all brought to you by Live Casino and Hotel, Easy Pass, Costas Inn, and HelpMyGamblingProblem.org. What you got for tidbit?
Last night, a couple of 40-point games. First career 40-point games. Peyton Pritchard scored 43 in the Celtics win over the Blazers. Derek White, his teammate, also scored 41. First time that those two crossed 40 in their careers. First time in NBA history that a pair of teammates each had their first career 40-point games in the same game. That's Pritchard and Derek White.
How about that?
That's the trivia question for you.
That's
so
it?
you remember that one.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure I'll remember
Pritchard
that.
and Derek White. Celtics on March 5th, 2025.
How about that?
Day that'll live in...
exactly the two that you would expect.
Earlier this week, I'm going to struggle with his name here. Alperen Sengun. Is that right? The Rockets kid?
Sanguine, I believe.
Sanguine? Okay, yeah. Sanguine. He recorded his 9th game of 30 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists, and he has still not turned 23. He is only the third center in NBA history with 9 such games of 30, 10, and 5 before turning 23.
I'm trying to figure out how to pronounce it because maybe I don't know. Go ahead.
I was going to see if you could name the other two.
Not a chance in hell.
It might be tough. Walt Bellamy.
Not a chance in hell. Okay.
Walt Bellamy had 10. And then
legend.
The other that had 9. Why did I click out of it? Of course, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Oh, well,
had 10. So good, strong company for Sanguine.
or
Right.
Sengun or whatever the hell his name
Yeah.
is that we can't come up with.
And then I wanted to broaden it. Could you name the guys with the most such games, no position, no age, most games all time of 30 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists?
I don't know why I'm trying to look up the pronunciation of the man's name.
They don't know. No one knows.
Oh no, the internet was just not working.
They don't want you to know though.
So it might be Sengun. It's the same sound as penguin without the I. Pengun?
Sengun?
Pengun? Is that what Sengun?
Sengun?
God damn it.
That doesn't help at all. Because I don't know what penguin would sound like without the I. Penguin?
But
Penguin?
then the pronunciation guy says Schengen. Schengen is what it says with an H. I got nothing.
Can you try to name guys that have scored 30-point games?
Yeah,
10
rebounds,
5
5 assists.
Most
all right.
all-time.
Most all time. LeBron.
Yeah, LeBron is second all-time, actually.
10 rebounds, 5 assists. How about, Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, Russ has had 93 such. He is fifth most all-time. I was going to do the guys that have done it, had 60 such games because there's 11, and they're all, strong names, but I guess we shouldn't be here all night.
Yeah, it's 12:21.
Well, we don't have anywhere to go.
I have a lot of stuff to do. How about Jokic?
Jokic is on the list.
Okay.
Third most all-time, already at 106 in his career.
How about Doncic?
Luka Doncic on the list, 89. 30 points, 10 rebound, 5 assist games for Luka.
Durant?
Durant is on the list, 62. One of the 11 with at least 60 such games.
Michael Jordan?
Michael Jordan has 61, one less than KD. He's at the bottom of our cutoff here.
It's the bottom of the cutoff is 61. All right, then. Harden?
Yes, James Harden. 65 for Harden.
Oscar Robertson?
No Big O.
Wonder what it would. Probably the points, I guess, is the issue there. Just an era where they weren't quite
the assists? Because
he had a lot of triple-doubles, man. He was like a triple-double king, so I don't think it's the assists. KG?
No KG.
Dirk?
No Dirk. Dirk is 21st on the list.
But Giannis?
Giannis is number 1
really?
all time. Most such games with 30, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists.
I guess that.
Yeah, so I guess Oscar Robertson just had like a lot of 20 points.
That's what I'm assuming.
Yeah. 20
How many am I missing?
1, 2, 3, 3. Yeah.
3.
All three, the remaining 3 not active.
Not active. Okay. Not active. How about I'm guessing if they're not active, then I'm trying to think of more like big men. Well, maybe. It's just that era wasn't an era of like guards getting 10 rebounds as much. Kareem.
No Kareem. Too far back.
Not active. Did I say Tim Duncan? Tim Duncan.
Not Tim Duncan.
And 30 points. I think they led the league in scoring.
Duncan's 16th on the list.
Okay. All right, give me something.
Dream Team. Yeah, is that too obvious?
Team. Chris Mullen. No. David Robinson.
No, David Robinson.
Larry Bird.
Larry Bird is on the list.
Did I say Magic? Have I guessed Magic?
You have not guessed Magic, but he is not on the list.
Am I still supposed to be guessing Dream Team?
Yeah, one more Dream Team guy.
Scottie Pippen.
Not Scottie Pippen.
Oh, Chuck.
Yeah, Charles
Yeah,
Barkley.
people forget that Chuck was a scorer, man.
Charles Barkley.
It's so easy. Like, you just think of the rebound. Like, he earlier in his career was a scorer. And then there's one other one.
Yeah. Oh, he was on the Dream Team, too, yeah. Right.
Oh, they all were on the Dream Team.
Yeah.
Who else have I not named on the Dream Team? Clyde Drexler?
Not Clyde Drexler.
Karl Malone.
Karl Malone. There you go. All 11 with the at least 60 such games.
How about that?
In that category.
How about that? All right, let's get tubular.
Have you ever thought of taking a cruise to these wonderful destinations with sunny skies and beautiful beaches? Well, wait no longer. We're ready for you to cruise from the Cruise Maryland Terminal.
Have a little phrase that you can go from baggage to margarita in about 15 minutes.
Choose fun with an array of destinations, onboard activities, entertainment, and world-class cuisine.
Contact your travel agent and book your cruise today. Let your adventure begin.
Patriot League Tournament quarterfinals tonight. Both Loyola and Navy on the road in quarterfinal action, both on ESPN+. Loyola's at Bucknell. Navy's at BU, 7 o'clock for both games. Morgan and Coppin, the rematch, 8 o'clock over at the Physical Education Complex. It's also on ESPN+. Mount St. Mary's at Quinnipiac tonight at 7 on ESPN Plus as well. Orioles Pirates, if you have MLB TV, you get a Pittsburgh radio broadcast for this one. It probably would be one worth tuning in for, as Paul Skeens and Zach Eflin are the pitching matchup. But
who wants to watch that?
Yeah, why would you want to watch that? 6:05 if you got an MLB TV subscription. Big Ten hoops tonight. Michigan State, Iowa at 8 o'clock on FS1. If Michigan State wins, they clinch the outright Big Ten regular season title. The rest of the college basketball, find at glennclarkradio.com. ESPN, Yankees, Twins at 1. Sabres, Lightning, 7. Sharks, Avalanche, 9:30. TNT, Sixers, Celtics, 7:30. Knicks, Lakers at 10. Drew Forrester says that's your NBA Finals matchup. And, of course, that's the man that knows the NBA. So.
What are the odds we can get on Knicks-Lakers match?
Don't know. Golf Channel for round 1 of the Arnold Palmer Invitational at 2 o'clock. Indian Wells action continues on the Tennis Channel starting at 2 o'clock. FS2 for CONCACAF Champions League tonight. Masson Nationals Cardinals at 1. MLB Network Astros Mets at 6. Access TV for TNA Impact tonight at 8. Non-sports.
An episode of Reacher, of course, on Prime Video. We have the series, the season finale of The Traitors on Peacock.
Yes, with Nikki Bella maybe, or one of the Bellas, or She's no longer. I don't know.
She was on it. Maybe she's still alive.
I can't pretend
I
to
know.
care.
I guess I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But
yeah, don't spoil it.
I tuned out after my favorite character got eliminated.
Yes. Yeah. Sure. Whoever that is.
Yeah, well, I'm a big Survivor fan. I think everyone can figure it out. Right, yeah. And then Impractical Jokers, of course, on TBS, an episode of that. Animal Control Going Dutch on Fox. And then, that's pretty much it. Hulu has this show called Deli Boys. A pair of Pakistani brothers have to take over their deli when their father unexpectedly dies. And they find out that the deli was actually just a front because he lives a life of crime. So it's supposed to be a comedy. Looks okay on Hulu, Deli Boys. And then Kevin Hartwell and Seth Meyers. We got Parker Posey and Alan Cumming on Jimmy Fallon. Also,
they are.
Hold on, no, you got to hear the Rick Pitino also on Fallon.
Oh, wait. Oh, hang on, that completely changed. You said it's Parker Posey, Alan Cumming, and Rick Pitino.
Correct.
Yes, I see. They're plugging Kevin Hart on Seth Meyers.
Really? It's just a whole pregame show?
Yeah, it's really
kind of
great. They're all like, hey, you should watch that. It's kind of crazy.
Wow, that's pretty crazy. That is crazy. And then Jennifer Coolidge and Sarah Bach on Kimmel.
Plugging the White Lotus, despite the fact that Jennifer Coolidge died.
Gotcha.
Yeah, despite that.
Spoilers.
If you haven't watched season 2 of the White Lotus, that's on you, Chief. That's not on me. That's on you.
No, it's on you.
No, not whatsoever.
Understand the audience.
Yeah. Dog, you got plenty of time. It's like somebody being mad. Like, imagine if you haven't watched The Sopranos and you're mad at somebody. No, dude. You don't get to dictate this. For like a day or a little while, you get to dictate it. This has been plenty of time. If you're going to watch season 2 of White Lotus, you needed to do it by now.
What did Drew say? Knicks Lakers?
Yeah, that was Drew's.
6,500 plus 6,500.
There you go.
Let's see. I got to do math here now. 15th best odds.
All right. Thanks today to Mike DeCourcy from Big Ten Network. Thanks to John Miller, author of The Last Manager, and to Will Schaller, Maryland Lacrosse. We'll get that up in the greatest hits section of the
Can You Take Me Higher
tab at glennclarkradio.com. Tomorrow on the program, rumor is Juju Reese going to join us?
That is the plan, yeah.
All right.
Julian Reese.
Look forward to that.
With us.
I've chatted with Juju a few times over the years. Of course, getting ready for an emotional senior day coming up on Saturday. Like the sounds of that. And stuff and things.
Yeah, stuff and things.
Well, we'll check in with either Stan or Luke down in Sarasota for sure. All right, thanks to everybody at PressBox, all of our great sponsors and partners, including Live Casino and Hotel, Cruise Maryland, Crown Trophy, Easy Pass, HelpMyGamblingProblem.org, Costas Inn, MSAA, Maryland Sports, the Baltimore Orioles, your local Toyota dealer, buyatoyota.com. Thanks to Griffin at Griffin_Bass. Follow us, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Glenn Clark Radio. Have a great Thursday evening. Go Loyola and Navy Hoops. Morgan or Coppin, Duke sucks.